Charleston, South Carolina city, painted with pastel houses, cobblestone streets, and the gentle sway of Spanish moss in the humid air. By day, it feels timeless, wrapped in southern charm and elegance. But when the sun dips below the horizon, Charleston changes, shadows lengthen, lantern lights flicker against centuries-old brick walls, and the city begins to whisper. The past does not sleep here, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War, from plagues to pirates, from love stories that ended in tragedy to duels fought in the name of pride. Charleston has carried it all. Some say that when you walk its narrow lanes, you are never truly alone. Spirits drift between the gas lamps and the wrought iron gates, lingering where they once lived, fought, or died. Tonight, we are stepping into that shadowed side of Charleston. Tonight, I'll take you through the 25 most haunted places in this historic city. So light your lantern, hold your breath, and follow closely because the dead of Charleston have much to show us. The old Exchange and Provost Dungeon stands proudly at the corner of East Bay and Broad Streets, a symbol of Charleston's long and layered history. From the outside, its stately Georgian architecture reflects the grandeur of the city's colonial past. Tourists admire the tall windows, the symmetry of the stonework, and the sense of permanence it projects. But what lies beneath this dignified exterior tells a much darker tale. For beneath the polished floors and grand meeting rooms sits the Provost Dungeon, a place where pain, fear, and despair seeped into the very stones. Built in the 1770s, the Exchange was originally intended as a civic hub site for gatherings, trade, and the pulse of the bustling port city. But the basement soon took on a different role, one that would stain its history forever. The Provost Dungeon became a holding place for prisoners, pirates, and political captives. It was not merely a jail, it was a pit of human misery, damp and oppressive, where the cries of those held within could be heard echoing up through the building. One of the earliest groups to know its horrors were the pirates who once plagued Charleston's shores. Captured buccaneers were chained in the dungeon, their wrists and ankles rubbed raw by iron restraints. Some grew so desperate in their confinement that they left claw marks on the walls, fingernail scratches etched into the stone as a final testament to their futile struggle for freedom. Many of them would be hauled above ground only to be led to the gallows. Their lives cut short, but their fury and despair lingering behind. During the Revolutionary War, the dungeon became even more infamous. British forces occupied Charleston, and the provost was filled with prisoners of war, rebels, sympathizers, and anyone deemed a threat to the crown. They were packed into the dark, airless chambers, where disease spread as quickly as despair. The cries of the suffering rose up into the night, and many never left the dungeon alive. Some say their spirits still linger, bound not by chains anymore, but by the torment of unfinished lives. Those who visit today often remark on the oppressive atmosphere that greets them as they descend into the lower chambers. The air grows cooler, heavier, as though infused with centuries of anguish. Tour guides describe how guests suddenly stop speaking, their chatter silenced by the weight of the place. The walls themselves seem to breathe, their rough surfaces damp with an eternal moisture, holding within them the memory of suffering. Strange occurrences are frequent in the dungeon. Visitors report whispers drifting through the darkness, soft and indistinct, yet undeniably human. Sometimes these voices seem to call out names, or plead in tones of desperation. Others hear the unmistakable clank of chains dragging across stone floors, though the chambers stand empty. Footsteps echo in the distance, measured and heavy, as though a guard still patrols the hallways, centuries after his watch should have ended. The apparitions are perhaps the most chilling reports. Shadowy figures appear in corners, standing just beyond the reach of the light. Some are described as gaunt, men with hollow eyes, staring at the living with a mixture of sorrow and anger. They do not approach, but watch, silently, as though waiting for a chance to be acknowledged. Others have seen quick flashes of movement, figures darting across doorways or slipping into the darkness, as though trying to escape some eternal confinement. One of the most unnerving experiences shared by visitors is the sensation of being touched. Guests describe feeling icy fingers brush against their arms, or the sudden weight of a hand pressing on their shoulder, only to turn and find no one there. Some leave the dungeon pale and shaken, convinced that one of its former captives had tried to make contact. For paranormal investigators, the Provost Dungeon is a treasure trove of activity. Electronic recorders have captured chilling whispers, voices too faint to have been heard in the moment, but clear on playback. Questions asked aloud are sometimes met with responses single words, often filled with despair, like help or please. Cameras have caught fleeting shadows, strange orbs of light, and misty figures that seem to hover for a moment before dissolving. Temperature readings often plummet in isolated spots, cold patches that move as if guided by invisible presence. And yet, despite the eerie encounters, many believe the spirits that haunt the dungeon are not malicious. They are remnants of people trapped in torment, reaching out to the living as if to remind them of the suffering that once filled these walls. They are men who never saw the sun again, whose names were lost to history, whose cries went unanswered. Their presence is a call not to forget. The old exchange in Provost Dungeon remains one of Charleston's most visited landmarks, a place where history and hauntings are inseparable. Schoolchildren come to learn of its role in the city's past, tourists marvel at its architecture, and thrill-seekers step into the basement, hoping for a brush with the supernatural. But every visitor carries away the same impression that the dungeon is alive in its own way, that the echoes of misery are still there, reverberating through time. Standing above, on the bright and busy streets of Charleston, the building looks like any other grand relic of history. But once you descend into the earth, into the chambers where pirates once clawed at stone and prisoners moaned in despair, you feel it. The cold in your bones, the prickle on your skin, the sense that you are not alone. The old exchange in Provost Dungeon is more than a monument. It is a reminder that some chains never truly break, and that some cries echo forever in the dark. The Dock Street Theater is one of Charleston's most beloved treasures, a grand cultural landmark that has hosted centuries of laughter, applause, and artistry. Its history stretches back to 1736, when it first opened its doors as one of the earliest playhouses in America. Over the centuries, it has seen fire, ruin, and resurrection, changing with the city itself. Today, it stands as both a theater and a monument to Charleston's past, drawing performers and audiences from around the world. But as the curtain rises and the lights dim, it is not only the living who take their seats. The Dock Street Theater has another, more ghostly audience, spirits who never left, bound to the building by tragedy, passion, and unfinished stories. The most famous of these restless souls is Nettie, a young woman from the 1800s. Her story is told with a mix of pity and reverence. For Nettie was a woman of humble means, who longed for more than life seemed willing to give her. Some say she worked in the city's hotels or taverns, surrounded by wealth she could never touch. Others claim she was drawn to Charleston's social circles, but found herself unwelcome among the elite. Whatever her truth, she was remembered for her beauty, and especially for a striking red dress. She often wore a dress that would become the mark of her ghost. Nettie's life was tragically cut short, whether by illness, misfortune, or despair. But her presence has lingered for over a century. Visitors to the Dock Street Theater often report seeing a woman in a red gown drifting silently through the balconies. She appears solid at first glance, as though she might be another patron lingering before the show. But when approached, she vanishes into thin air. Actors rehearsing late at night sometimes glance toward the empty rows and swear they see her seated among them, her face pale, her gaze distant, as though forever waiting for a performance that never ends. Backstage, she has been spotted moving through the curtains, the faint rustle of her dress echoing when no one else is near. Nettie is not the only ghost said to inhabit the theater. The Dock Street's long history has left it layered with energies from countless lives, tragedies, and triumphs. One of the other most common reports is of a phantom voice calling names in the darkness. Actors preparing to step on stage describe hearing someone whisper their name from behind them, only to find the wings empty. Some claim the voice is playful, while others say it carries a note of warning. The source is never found. Then there are the cold spots. The theater is notorious for sudden drops in temperature, often in places where history records the greatest tragedies. Actors have walked into pockets of icy air in the middle of summer, so frigid it makes them shiver. Guests touring the building have felt invisible chills brush past them, as though unseen figures are moving through the crowd. On more than one occasion, entire rehearsal halls have grown cold enough for actors to see their breath, only to return to normal seconds later. Perhaps the most unnerving reports are of phantom applause. Actors finishing a rehearsal sometimes pause, startled by the sound of clapping echoing from the balcony, though every seat stands empty. The applause is never frantic or loud, but steady and unmistakably. If the ghosts of audiences past are still applauding the performances they once cherished, some actors admit to finding comfort in this, feeling that the spirits are offering encouragement. Others confess it chills them to the bone, to know their craft is judged not just by the living. The Dock Street Theater has also seen its share of other tragedies. The original building burned in the 1740s, leaving only fragments of its early glory. It was later rebuilt and transformed into a hotel, which itself suffered decline and ruin. During this time, countless visitors passed through its halls, some of them never to leave again. The energy of their joys and sorrows is said to have seeped into the very foundations of the building, carried forward even when the theater was reborn in the 20th century. Some paranormal investigators believe that Dock Street is what's known as a thin place, where the veil between the living and the dead wears dangerously thin. This would explain the sheer variety of ghostly activity reported within its walls. From shadows flickering across the stage to strange orbs caught in photographs, the theater provides no shortage of mysteries. Ghost hunters, who bring audio equipment, often capture faint voices, whispering lines from plays long past, as if the building itself is repeating its history. For actors and staff, the hauntings have become a part of the theater's identity. Many speak of Nettie not with fear, but with respect, acknowledging her as a permanent resident of the building. Some leave flowers or tokens in her memory, believing it keeps her presence calm. Others choose not to acknowledge her at all, worried that speaking her name might invite her closer. Audience members to have their share of stories. A visitor attending a performance might feel a sudden brush against their arm, as though someone brushed past them in the aisle, only to find the row empty. Couples taking photographs in the lobby sometimes discover an unfamiliar figure in the background, a pale face, watching from the shadows. And late at night, when the theater lies dark and empty, security guards tell of lights flickering on stage and faint music playing from nowhere, as though the ghosts are putting on a show of their own. The Dock Street Theater is not just a place of art and culture, it's a living memory of Charleston itself, where centuries of joy, pain, and passion have left their mark. Its ghosts are not malicious. They are part of its fabric, the echoes of lives that once filled its halls. Nettie's red dress may glide through the balconies, unseen hands may applaud from the shadows, and phantom voices may whisper in the wings. But the theater continues, alive, with both the living and the dead. As the curtain falls and the audience rises, many leave believing they've simply witnessed another performance. But those who linger, those who pause in the silence after the lights dim, sometimes sense something more. The Dock Street Theater has never been empty, and perhaps it never will be. Its eternal guests remain, applauding from the dark, forever part of Charleston's most haunted stage. The Battery Carriage House Inn, perched elegantly on Charleston's famed Battery Promenade, presents itself as a place of warmth and southern charm. Nestled among stately antebellum mansions and shaded by moss-draped oaks, it radiates an air of old-world sophistication. Guests who arrive expecting only hospitality, however, often find themselves in the company of something more. For, behind the polished wood, the rich drapery, and the promise of comfort lies a reputation that has haunted this inn for decades. Known as Charleston's most haunted inn, the Battery Carriage House is a place where elegance coexists with terror, and where the spirits of the past do not simply linger, they make their presence known. The building itself carries a history as long and layered as the city around it. Originally constructed in the 19th century, the house was part of Charleston's wealthy residential district, overlooking the water and the stone seawall that gives the battery its name. Over the decades, it bore witness to war, hurricanes, and countless families passing through its halls. But as with much of Charleston, beauty here conceals sorrow. Stories of heartbreak, violence, and sudden death became woven into the very structure, and the energy of those who suffered seems unwilling to let go. Guests stepping across the threshold today are greeted by polished floors and fine hospitality, but as night deepens, many have reported the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Among the inn's many ghostly tales, one in particular has become infamous: the apparition of the headless torso. Numerous guests, startled awake in the middle of the night, have described the same terrifying sitter figure, human yet incomplete, standing silently at the foot of their bed. No face, no head, only the dim outline of a torso and shoulders hovering in the darkness. Some report it sways slightly, as though unsteady on its feet, while others say it stands utterly motionless, locked in some eternal state of unfinished existence. The apparition does not speak, nor does it attack, yet the terror it inspires is undeniable. Guests have fled their rooms in the middle of the night, too shaken to stay until morning. Another of the inn's enduring phantoms is the glowing man. His presence is less horrifying, but no less unnerving. He has been described as luminous, his outline faintly shining in the dark, as if lit from within. Guests often report seeing him drift silently through the walls, his movements slow and searching, as though he is hunting for something long lost. Some say he lingers by windows, staring out into the night, while others have encountered him gliding through the hallways. His glow is gentle but inescapable, a spectral lantern in the gloom. Unlike the headless torso, the glowing man does not inspire sheer terror rather. He evokes unease, as though his endless wandering is a reminder of something unresolved, some tragedy that bound him to the house forever. But not all experiences at the Battery Carriage House involve visible apparitions. For many, the true horror is the atmosphere itself. Certain rooms, in particular, are said to feel impossibly heavy, as if the very air thickens the moment the door closes. Guests describe the sensation of being observed, of invisible eyes tracking their movements, of whispers too faint to distinguish curling in the silence. Some feel sudden chills, sharp enough to raise gooseflesh even on Charleston's warm summer nights. Others have woken to the distinct weight of something pressing down on the bed, as though an unseen presence has climbed beside them in the dark. Employees, to have their share of unsettling stories. Housekeepers have reported doors slamming without cause, linens pulled from beds, and lights flickering despite modern wiring. Some refuse to linger in certain rooms after dusk, their unease too great. Even those skeptical of ghosts admit that the Battery Carriage House feels different. Its shadows longer, its corners darker, its silence more charged than other homes along the Battery. Theories about the inn's hauntings are as numerous as its guests. Some believe the headless torso may be the spirit of a Civil War soldier, decapitated in battle, who found himself bound to the house upon his violent death. Others claim he was a victim of crime within the home itself, his murder so brutal that it left a permanent scar on the property. As for the glowing man, some suggest he is a former resident, searching endlessly for a loved one lost to time, his grief illuminating his spectral form. The truth is impossible to pin down, but the consistency of the sightings gives weight to the stories. Despite its chilling reputation, the Battery Carriage House remains a beloved inn, its elegance attracting those who seek more than just history. They seek an experience. For ghost hunters, it is a must-visit location. For thrill seekers, a night within its walls promises memories they will never forget. And for those who stumble into its haunted embrace unwittingly, the stories they carry away often last a lifetime. Few who encounter the inn spirits leave unchanged. Charleston itself is a city built on layers of the past, its streets echoing with centuries of triumph and tragedy. The Battery Carriage House is a reflection of that duality, at once inviting and unsettling, beautiful, yet shadowed by day. It is a place of warmth and hospitality, offering charm to those who visit. By night, it becomes something else entirely. A stage for restless spirits, a dwelling where the veil between the living and the dead grows thin, and a reminder that history never truly fades. Those who dare to spend a night within its walls often describe leaving with two sets of memories. One of soft sheets, fine surroundings, and gracious service, and another of spectral figures, cold touches, and the suffocating certainty that they were not alone. The Battery Carriage House in May welcomed the living, but it also shelters the dead. And the dead, it seems, have no intention of leaving. St. Philip's Church rises above Charleston, with quiet grandeur, its tall spire, a beacon that has watched over the city since the 18th century. To passersby, it is one of the city's most photographed landmarks, a symbol of history and faith. Yet for all its beauty, the church carries a reputation darker than its stately appearance suggests. Beneath its shadowed grounds lies a graveyard where the past does not rest easily, and where grief and sorrow have left marks deeper than stone. Those who wander its pathways at night often find themselves confronted not only with the weight of history, but with the living presence of the dead. The graveyard of St. Philip's has become legendary for its spectral inhabitants. Visitors walking among the crumbling tombstones have reported seeing glowing figures drifting silently between the graves. Some appear like pale wisps of light, moving in slow, deliberate arcs across the grass. Others describe faces that flicker in the shadows, watching from the corners of vision, only to vanish when directly confronted. More than one visitor has been startled by sudden bursts of light flashing over the headstones, as though some unseen presence is trying to draw attention. One of the most well-known spirits said to haunt these grounds is Sue Howard Hardy, whose tragic story has become inseparable from the churchyard's legend. In 1888, Sue endured the heartbreak of losing her child during childbirth. The grief was too much for her fragile health, and she died only 6 days later. Locals say her sorrow never left her, that her spirit remains tethered to the place where her child was laid to rest. For decades, stories of a weeping woman, dressed in the clothing of the late 19th century, circulated among locals. People spoke of seeing her kneeling beside graves, her form flickering in the moonlight, her sobs carried faintly on the night air. The most famous evidence of her presence came in 1987, when a visitor to St. Philip's took what seemed like an ordinary photograph of the graveyard. When the film was developed, it revealed something extraordinary. In the image, a luminous figure appeared, kneeling beside a grave. Her head was bowed, her posture one of grief and prayer. To many, it was unmistakably the spirit of Sue Howard Hardy, still mourning her lost child more than a century later. The photograph quickly became a point of fascination, passed from hand to hand as proof that the graveyard held more than just stone and memory. Skeptics argued it was a trick of light, a double exposure, or a flaw in the film. But those who had long believed in Sue's restless spirit felt vindicated. The legend of Sue is not the only ghost story tied to St. Philip's. Locals and visitors alike speak of other strange encounters in the churchyard. Some have described a tall, dark figure moving silently between the stones, vanishing before it reaches the gate. Others tell of whispers carried on the wind, disembodied voices murmuring prayers or names as though from beneath the earth itself. More unsettling are the reports of sudden physical sensations, icy hand brushing against a shoulder, the feeling of fabric tugged from behind, or the weight of unseen eyes pressing down. The church itself has its share of spectral tales. Parishioners have claimed to hear footsteps echoing along empty hallways, doors opening and closing without cause, and the sound of faint organ music drifting from the sanctuary when the instrument lay untouched. At times, faint figures have been spotted through the stained glass windows, shapes that vanish the moment one enters to investigate. The graveyard's history helps explain the intensity of its hauntings. Burials here stretch back to the early days of Charleston, with many prominent citizens laid to rest within its walls. Soldiers, politicians, ministers, and entire families have found their eternal place in its soil. With so much history concentrated in one place, it is little wonder that the veil between the living and the dead sometimes feels thin. Every stone carries not only a name and date, but the residue of lives lived in triumph, tragedy, and longing. For paranormal investigators, St. Philip's is a site of fascination. Ghost hunters have brought cameras, audio recorders, and thermal equipment into the graveyard, often leaving with chilling evidence. Recordings have captured faint cries, low voices, and in one case, a woman whispering, "My baby." Though no one present had spoken those words, thermal cameras pick up sudden flashes of heat and cold in areas where no physical explanation exists. Some investigators report batteries draining rapidly, as though unseen forces are drawing on their energy. For those who come seeking only the beauty of the site, the hauntings serve as a reminder that Charleston's charm is often inseparable from its sorrow. St. Philip's, with its stately steeple rising over the city, may look like a symbol of eternal peace, but its graveyard speaks of the fragility of life and the persistence of grief. The story of Sue Howard Hardy resonates not just as a ghost tale, but as a human tragedy, the kind of sorrow that lingers far beyond the grave. Even skeptics admit that something about St. Philip's feels heavy, as though the air itself remembers. To walk the paths between the graves is to feel a quiet presence pressing in, an awareness that the past is closer here than in most places. Whether the glowing figures are truly spirits or simply tricks of the eye, the effect is the same. Visitors leave convinced they have brushed against something beyond explanation. At night, when the spire looms against the moonlit sky and the shadows lengthen across the gravestones, the graveyard of St. Philip's becomes a stage for the unseen. Perhaps it is grief, perhaps memory, perhaps something more. But for those who have walked its grounds, one truth remains certain: some spirits, bound by love and loss, never truly leave. Sue Howard Hardy's sorrow endures, her spectral vigil a timeless reminder that the human heart does not always rest in death. The Unitarian Church graveyard in Charleston is unlike any other burial ground in the city. Step through its gates, and it feels as though you are crossing into another world, one where time has loosened its grip and nature has taken control. Unlike manicured cemeteries with trimmed hedges and carefully tended lawns, this graveyard is purposefully left wild. Thick vines twist around ancient tombstones, Spanish moss drapes from low-hanging branches, and wildflowers bloom defiantly among cracked marble markers. To some, it is beautiful in its chaos, a reminder of life persisting amid decay. To others, it is unsettling, for in the overgrowth one feels less alone, as though unseen eyes are always watching. Locals whisper that this graveyard is one of Charleston's most haunted places, a claim easy to believe once you step inside. The silence here is different, heavy, as if soaked in centuries of memory. It is said that the spirits of those buried here wander the crooked paths, their whispers carried on the wind. Visitors often describe faint voices trailing behind them, the kind of low murmurs that rise and fall like a conversation just out of reach. At times, the words seem sharp and urgent. At others, they are soft, almost pleading. Few who hear them forget the sensation of being followed by voices that have no source. Stranger still are the figures seen moving among the trees. People walking through the graveyard report glimpses of pale shapes drifting between the headstones, their outlines blurred like shadows caught in a dream. These apparitions appear most often near twilight, when the dying light deepens the shadows and the graveyard seems to breathe with a life of its own. Some figures are described as women in long dresses, their faces obscured by veils or falling hair. Others are men in coats from centuries past, their expressions blank as they move silently through the overgrowth. More than one visitor has tried to follow these phantoms, only to find them vanish abruptly, leaving nothing but the rustle of leaves in their wake. One of the most enduring legends tied to the Unitarian Church graveyard is that it may be the final resting place of Annabel Lee, the woman many believe inspired Edgar Allan Poe's famous poem. The poem speaks of a love so deep that even death could not sever it, a haunting story of a maiden lost too soon, her spirit still lingering by the sea. Whether Poe truly drew from a real woman in Charleston has never been confirmed, but the story has persisted through generations. Some say Annabel Lee was buried within these very grounds, her grave hidden among the overgrowth to protect her identity. Visitors claim to see her ghost wandering the cemetery. Dressed in white, her presence accompanied by the faint scent of flowers and the echo of Poe's melancholy verse in the air. Even for those who do not encounter Annabel Lee's spirit, the graveyard offers no shortage of unexplainable experiences. Paranormal investigators who have ventured into the grounds often leave with chilling evidence. Recordings of disembodied voices, sudden drops in temperature, and unexplained shadows moving across their cameras. Some claim to have captured a woman's voice softly reciting poetry, while others have heard weeping so faint it seemed to come from the very earth itself. The twisting paths of the graveyard lend themselves to confusion, and it is easy to feel disoriented, as though the landscape itself is subtly shifting. For staff and caretakers, the hauntings are not merely stories, they are lived experiences. Groundskeepers report hearing footsteps pacing just behind them, only to turn and find the path empty. Tools left neatly arranged are sometimes found scattered or overturned, as if unseen hands had disturbed them. On quiet mornings, when mist clings to the earth, it is not unusual to glimpse a shadow standing at the edge of vision, unmoving, watching. Many who work here accept these occurrences as part of the graveyard's character, a reminder that the dead have not relinquished their hold on the place. The atmosphere of the graveyard itself seems to amplify these strange events. The overgrown foliage creates tunnels of shadow and light, where the wind sighs through the trees and every sound carries a mysterious weight. Birds grow silent without warning, and sudden chills sweep through even on warm summer evenings. The smell of damp earth mixes with something less definable, a faint sweetness that some compare to perfume. It is in these moments when the air thickens and the silence deepens that visitors most often feel the presence of something unseen. Some stories speak of direct encounters. A tourist once described a woman in a flowing gown who appeared to him beside a crumbling headstone. She looked sorrowful but calm, her eyes fixed on the grave as though lost in thought. When he tried to speak, she faded slowly into the air, leaving behind only the lingering scent of roses. Another visitor claimed to feel a cold hand brush against her arm, while standing near a cluster of old graves. The sensation so vivid that she stumbled back, convinced someone had touched her. When she looked around, no one was there. Despite its haunting reputation, many locals regard the Unitarian Church graveyard with reverence rather than fear. It is seen as a sacred place where nature and memory intertwine, a space that honors both the beauty and the sorrow of the past. The wild growth is not neglect but intention, a reflection of the belief that life and death should coexist freely. Perhaps it is this philosophy that gives the graveyard its unique aura, inviting the spirits to linger rather than depart. Still, for those who dare to wander its paths after dark, the experience can be deeply unsettling. Every footstep feels amplified, every shadow seems alive, and every breath carries the weight of unseen company. The graveyard does not scream its hauntings, but whispers them, quietly and insistently, until you can no longer deny their presence. In the end, the Unitarian Church graveyard is more than a resting place. It is a living story, its chapters written in vines, stone, and silence. Whether or not Annabel Lee lies beneath its tangled earth, her legend and the countless other spirits bound to these grounds ensure that the graveyard's voice is never silenced. Here, the dead do not sleep, they listen, they watch, and they remind the living that love, grief, and memory endure long after the last breath has been taken. White Point Garden, nestled at the tip of Charleston's peninsula, is one of the city's most iconic and picturesque parks. By day, it feels like a postcard come to life. Children laughing as they play beneath ancient oak trees, tourists taking photos of historic cannons, and couples strolling along the seawall with the Atlantic breeze brushing against their faces. The garden exudes beauty, history, and tranquility. But when the sun dips below the horizon and shadows spread across the cobblestone paths, White Point Garden transforms. The cheerful atmosphere fades, replaced by a heavy silence that seems to cling to the air. What remains is not only the charm of a historic park, but also the weight of its darker past, one that has given rise to some of Charleston's most chilling ghost stories. In the early 1700s, when piracy roamed unchecked along the Carolina coast, White Point Garden was not a place of leisure, but of justice and fear. Charleston had become a prime target for buccaneers eager to seize goods and terrorize the colonies. When captured, these pirates often met a gruesome fate: public execution. White Point, then just a barren stretch of land at the edge of the city, became the stage for these grim spectacles. Men accused of plunder and murder were marched before jeering crowds, nooses tied tightly around their necks, and hanged from the oak branches that still stand in the garden today. But the punishment did not end with death. Their bodies were left swaying in the salty air, rotting for days, as a warning to others who might dare threaten Charleston's waters. Locals would walk past the dangling corpses, the stench and sight serving as a reminder of the consequences of lawlessness. It is said that many of these condemned men went to their deaths cursing the city, swearing vengeance even as the rope tightened. Their anger, grief, and unfinished business are believed to have anchored their spirits to the very ground where they drew their last breath. Even now, centuries later, stories abound of ghostly figures swinging from the trees after nightfall. Visitors describe walking along the paths only to catch sight of shapes hanging in the branches, swaying gently as though moved by a breeze that does not exist. These figures appear pale, translucent, sometimes barely more than a shadow, but unmistakably human in form. The chilling part is not just seeing them, it is the overwhelming dread that accompanies the vision. A wave of sorrow and terror that makes the hair on the back of the neck stand straight. Phantom screams are another common report. The ocean breeze that rolls in across the battery often carries with it faint cries, agonized shouts that rise and fall like echoes from another time. Some visitors say the sound resembles the desperate pleas of men who know they are about to die. Voices carried endlessly across the centuries. Others claim to hear the crack of ropes tightening or the creak of branches under an unseen weight. For those walking alone at night, the noises can be unbearable, sending even the bravest hurrying back toward the safety of the city lights. The gardens, cannons, and monuments, reminders of Charleston's long and turbulent history, only add to the eerie atmosphere. Though they commemorate battles and victories, they also serve as markers of bloodshed and death. Some locals believe that the restless souls of not only pirates, but also soldiers linger here, their energies overlapping and creating a vortex of haunting activity. The garden, after all, has stood through wars, duels, and countless personal tragedies, its soil absorbing layer upon layer of human suffering. One particularly chilling account tells of a couple who, while walking late at night, noticed a man in old-fashioned clothing sitting on a bench beneath one of the oaks. At first, he seemed solid, his broad hat casting a shadow across his face. But as they drew nearer, the man slowly lifted his head, revealing hollow eyes and a slack jaw. Before they could react, his form dissolved into mist, leaving the bench empty and the couple shaken. Others have spoken of cold spots that appear without warning. On humid Charleston nights, where the air feels heavy and stifling, sudden pockets of icy chill can feel like stepping into another world entirely. Some say this is the moment when a spirit brushes past, its presence chilling the living as it wanders eternally through the park. More sensitive visitors describe a sense of being watched, eyes tracking them from unseen places, a suffocating awareness that they are not alone even when the garden is deserted. Not all the spirits are vengeful, however. Some seem lost, endlessly retracing the steps that led them to their deaths. Figures have been seen walking aimlessly through the garden, their movements repetitive and sorrowful, as though doomed to relive their final moments forever. In some rare instances, visitors claim these spirits have approached them not with malice, but with a kind of desperate longing, as if reaching out for recognition, forgiveness, or release. Despite its ghostly reputation, White Point Garden continues to be cherished as one of Charleston's most beautiful spaces. The oak trees, draped in Spanish moss, remain breathtaking, and the seawall offers a view of the harbor that is second to none. But this beauty carries with it a reminder. Beneath the surface charm lies a darker truth, one written in blood, rope, and restless curses. For every child's laugh and every tourist's photo, there is also the echo of a scream, the shadow of a body, the whisper of a soul unable to move on. To walk through White Point Garden after sunset is to step into a place where Charleston's history refuses to stay buried. The pirates who once defied the law, the soldiers who once defended the city, and the countless nameless souls tied to this ground seem to stir in the silence. Their presence lingers in the rustling leaves, in the salt-scented wind, and in the shadows stretching long across the grass. The garden is beautiful, yes, but its beauty is haunted. And when night falls, and the city grows quiet, the past rises once more. A chilling reminder that death does not always bring peace. At White Point Garden, the pirates may have been silenced centuries ago, but their curses and cries still echo on the breeze, ensuring that this place will never truly belong to the living. The Powder Magazine stands as one of Charleston's oldest and most intriguing landmarks. Built in 1713, it is the city's oldest surviving public building, its thick brick walls and sloping roof a testament to colonial craftsmanship. Originally constructed to store gunpowder for the defense of Charleston, the building once hummed with the energy of preparation, discipline, and vigilance. Soldiers patrolled its grounds, barrels of explosive powder were carefully guarded, and the threat of attack hung over the city like a constant shadow. Yet for all its historic importance, there is another layer to the Powder Magazine that draws a different kind of attention, one of darkness, mystery, and restless spirits that seem to linger long after the cannons have fallen silent. The building itself exudes an air of permanence and strength. Its thick walls, nearly 2 feet deep in some places, were meant to protect the city and contain dangerous gunpowder. Inside, the rooms are sparse, with the heavy timber beams and brick floors evoking the practical seriousness of a military installation. But those who step inside often report that the walls seem to hold more than powder. Visitors describe sudden chills, icy gusts of air that cannot be explained by drafts or ventilation. Even in the warm Charleston humidity, the air within can drop to a near-freezing cold, seizing the breath and sending shivers down the spine. It is as if the building itself remembers the lives that passed through it and refuses to let their presence fade. Whispers are among the most commonly reported phenomena. Guests claim to hear quiet voices in the stillness of the rooms, words too faint to comprehend, yet distinct enough to stir unease. Some say the murmurs sound like soldiers discussing duty or warning one another of unseen threats, their tones clipped and urgent as if the centuries have trapped them in eternal preparation. Others report voices that seem older, darker, more sinister, like the soft mutterings of some malevolent presence lying in wait. The whispers are often fleeting, disappearing as quickly as they appear, leaving listeners questioning their own senses. Movement has been reported as well. Visitors often glimpse shadows shifting just beyond the edge of their vision, disappearing when they try to focus. Doors that appear securely latched swing open on their own, and objects have been seen subtly displaced. Some who have spent time in the Powder Magazine alone have felt the sensation of being followed, of unseen eyes tracking their every step. It is a building that seems to live and breathe, its atmosphere charged with the energy of both the living and the dead. Those who study the haunted reputation of the Powder Magazine point to its history as a key factor. Soldiers who guarded the gunpowder during colonial times and later during conflicts may have died within its walls, and some suggest their spirits never moved on. Accounts of apparitions describe uniformed men standing watch, rigid and vigilant, vanishing when approached. Some visitors swear they have heard the clink of a musket or the shuffle of boots on brick, as if the soldier's duty to protect the city extends beyond death. In this way, the building is more than a relic. It is a stage where the past continues to play out for those sensitive to its energy. Yet some believe the presence is not merely human. Darker forces are said to linger here as well, drawn perhaps by the energy of the explosives once contained within or by centuries of death and duty. There are reports of sudden oppressive feelings, a weight pressing down on those who enter, and the sensation of being watched by something unseen, intelligent, and patient. Unlike the soldiers, these presences are not merely observers, they are watchers. waiting silently, as if the building itself is a trap for the living. Even modern-day tours often recount eerie experiences. Guides have reported cameras malfunctioning, flash photography capturing unexplained orbs, and lights flickering in sealed rooms. Visitors have felt their skin crawl inexplicably, and some have walked away with the impression that the powder magazine is aware of their presence. The stories are so consistent that even skeptics admit to a strange, oppressive atmosphere when standing alone within the building. The paradox of the powder magazine is that it is at once a historic treasure and a place of unease. It is celebrated for its colonial architecture, its role in Charleston's defense, and its meticulous preservation. Yet those same walls, meant to guard against explosions, seem to guard against something far less tangible, but far more persistent: the lingering energy of lives caught between worlds, of duty unfulfilled, of forces beyond understanding. Visitors leave with both awe and unease, aware that the building they admired in daylight conceals a darker, more unsettling reality after dark. Some who have ventured inside late at night report leaving with lasting impressions: cold fingers brushing the shoulder, the sensation of a presence hovering just behind, or faint whispers that linger in memory long after leaving. These experiences hint at a truth that cannot be captured in guidebooks or plaques. The powder magazine is a place where history and the supernatural intertwine, where the past does not remain silent, and where the walls themselves seem to hold stories unwilling to be forgotten. Walking through the building, it becomes clear that the powder magazine is not merely haunted, it's alive with memory. The soldiers who patrolled its floors, the explosive materials that once threatened the city, and the darker, unnamed forces all contribute to an atmosphere charged with anticipation and vigilance. It is a place that teaches caution, respect, and perhaps humility, reminding visitors that some parts of history are not meant to remain buried. For those willing to explore its shadows, the powder magazine offers a chilling experience. It is a site where the past refuses to be forgotten, where the living can feel the weight of centuries pressing down, and where the restless dead may still patrol the halls they once knew in life. The building stands solid, a monument to Charleston's history. Yet it is also a doorway into a world that has never truly let go of the city it once protected. Poogan's Porch, nestled on Queen Street in Charleston, is a restaurant as famous for its southern cuisine as it is for its spectral residents. At first glance, the historic house appears warm and inviting. Guests step onto its wide porch, greeted by the charm of an old southern home. The air thick with the aroma of biscuits and fried chicken. But behind the laughter of diners and the clatter of plates lies a quieter story, a tale of grief, memory, and spirits that never quite let go. The restaurant takes its name from Poogan, a scruffy neighborhood dog who lived on the porch long before the building became a dining spot. Poogan was beloved by locals and visitors alike, a friendly pup who made himself at home on the steps. When he passed away in 1979, the new owners chose to honor him by naming the restaurant after him. Many say that even now, Poogan's spirit lingers. Diners and staff sometimes feel a brush against their legs under the table, only to look down and find nothing there. Others swear they've seen a small dog dart across the porch, vanishing into thin air. Poogan may be gone, but his porch still belongs to him. Yet Poogan is not the only ghost who keeps watch here. The most famous spirit tied to the restaurant is Zoe St. Ammon, a schoolteacher who once lived in the house with her sister, Elizabeth. The sisters were inseparable, but when Elizabeth died, Zoe's world crumbled. Stricken with grief, she withdrew from society, rarely leaving the house, her days consumed by loneliness and sorrow. When she too passed away, it seemed her spirit could not bear to leave the home that had witnessed both her love and her loss. Today, diners and staff often speak of encounters with Zoe. She is most often described as a woman in a long dark dress, her hair pulled back, her presence unmistakably out of another time. Guests have mistaken her for a hostess, politely waiting for a table, only to watch in shock as she fades into nothing before their eyes. Others hear the sound of soft footsteps upstairs, even though the rooms above are empty and off limits. Some encounters are gentler, a fleeting glimpse of a figure reflected in a mirror, or the faint rustle of fabric in a quiet room. But there are also reports of colder moments, sudden chills sweeping across a dining table, or the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. One staff member recalled setting tables after closing when she heard a woman humming softly from the next room. When she went to investigate, the dining room was empty, though the air smelled faintly of old perfume. Paranormal investigators have visited Poogan's Porch over the years, drawn by its reputation as one of Charleston's most haunted spots. Many report unexplained cold spots, flickering lights, and voices caught on recording devices. One chilling story tells of a guest staying at a nearby inn who woke in the night to see a woman standing at the foot of her bed. When the guest cried out, the figure dissolved into the air, leaving behind only a lingering sense of sorrow. The inn's staff later revealed that the room overlooked Poogan's porch, and the description of the woman matched Zoe exactly. Despite these eerie tales, most who encounter Zoe describe her not as frightening, but as sad. Her ghost seems to carry the same melancholy that defined her final years. A soul unable to leave behind the grief that consumed her in life. It is as though she is forever searching for her sister, for comfort, or perhaps simply for peace. For many Charlestonians, the ghost stories add another layer of charm to Poogan's Porch. Visitors come for the food, but leave with tales of brushes with the past. A reminder that history in Charleston is never far away. The city is full of such stories, homes and streets where the living and the dead still mingle, where sorrow and memory refuse to fade. At Poogan's Porch, the past lingers in every corner. The spirit of a loyal dog still watches over his porch, brushing against the ankles of diners as if to welcome them. The sorrowful figure of Zoe drifts through the dining rooms, her presence both haunting and tender, a reminder of love and loss that time could not erase. A meal here is more than just food. It is an encounter with memory, with history, and with the unseen. Charleston has no shortage of haunted sites, but Poogan's Porch remains one of its most beloved. A place where the living gather to eat and laugh, even as the dead continue to keep their quiet vigil. Those who dine here may leave full and content, but some carry away something else, a brush with the past, a chill on the air, or the memory of a figure glimpsed in passing. And for those who believe, it is proof that not all stories end when life does. At Poogan's Porch, the table is never set for the living alone. The old city jail of Charleston stands as a grim monument to the city's darkest past. From 1802 to 1939, its walls confine some of the most feared criminals of the era: pirates, Civil War prisoners, violent felons, and even Lavinia Fisher, America's first documented female serial killer. The building's stone facade and iron-barred windows project an austere dignity. Yet beneath the surface lies an atmosphere thick with suffering, fear, and the echoes of lives cut tragically short. For visitors who step through its doors, the Old City Jail is not merely a historical site. It is a place where the weight of centuries presses down, and the presence of the dead can be felt in every shadow and corridor. Walking through the jail, one immediately senses the oppressive energy that has lingered long after the last prisoners were released. The narrow hallways, lined with iron-barred cells, hold the residual emotions of those who suffered within. Cold spots appear unexpectedly, often in the middle of otherwise warm rooms, leaving a sudden chill that runs down the spine. Many visitors report the sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes follow every step. It is the kind of place where silence is heavy, yet alive with whispers, distant footsteps, and the occasional metallic rattle of chains, as though the inmates of the past have never truly left their confines. Among the most infamous figures associated with the Old City Jail is Lavinia Fisher, whose name still inspires dread. She and her husband, John, were accused of luring travelers into their Charleston boarding house, only to murder them for their valuables. Lavinia's cunning and ruthlessness earned her a notorious place in criminal history, and some claim her spirit remains in the jail, a restless presence roaming the cells where she was once confined. Visitors have described feeling sudden waves of anger or defiance, as if the energy of a woman, unbroken by death, presses against the air itself. Others recount hearing eerie footsteps echoing in empty corridors, or the faint sound of a woman's voice, calling out in anguish or warning. The old city jail's architecture amplifies the sense of unease. Its narrow, dark corridors wind unpredictably, lined with heavy doors and iron bars that rattle under unseen pressure. The cells, small and suffocating, were designed to strip prisoners of comfort, and that oppressive energy remains. Tour guides recount stories of visitors who suddenly feel the weight of a hand pressing on their shoulders, only to turn and find the space empty. Scratches have appeared on arms, and cold hands have brushed against the skin of those who linger too long in the darker corners. Even skeptics often admit that the building carries a presence that cannot be explained away by history alone. The paranormal activity is not limited to Lavinia Fisher. Pirates executed and imprisoned here, along with countless violent offenders, have left traces of their suffering behind. Echoes of chains dragging across stone floors are heard when no one is walking. Doors, securely latched, swing open without explanation, and muffled screams rise from the cells, as if the pain of punishment is replaying itself across centuries. Visitors have described shadows moving against the walls, indistinct figures that vanish when approached, and a sensation of being pressed into corners by something unseen. The old city jail is a place where fear seems to cling to the very air, heavy and inescapable. Many ghost hunters and thrill seekers are drawn to the site, eager to experience the stories firsthand. They often carry recording devices, cameras, and EMF detectors, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural. Some report flickering lights, unexplained noises, or faint voices caught on tape, whispering names or issuing warnings. Others claim to have seen apparitions of former prisoners, their faces twisted in anger, fear, or despair, peering through bars from long ago cells. The old city jail is more than a museum. It is a living reminder that death and injustice leave lingering traces, sometimes palpable, sometimes subtle, yet always present. Visitors also note that the building feels oppressive in ways that go beyond the paranormal. Even in daylight, the weight of history is suffocating. The hallways seem narrower, the ceilings lower, and the walls closer than they appear from the outside. The energy of decades of human suffering presses against anyone who enters, and it becomes easy to imagine the screams and cries of prisoners reverberating across time. Those who walk through the jail often feel a compulsion to move quickly, to avoid lingering, as though staying too long would draw unwanted attention from the spirits within. Lavinia Fisher herself seems to command particular attention. Accounts suggest she is protective of the space she once inhabited. Some say she warns intruders away with sudden chills, slamming doors, or fleeting glimpses of her shadow moving down corridors. Others describe feeling a quiet but intense presence, a reminder of her cunning, her cruelty, and her enduring defiance. Her legend has made her a central figure in Charleston's ghost lore, a woman whose life of crime, suffering, and execution continues to ripple across the ages. The old city jail remains one of Charleston's most visited haunted locations precisely because of its reputation. It embodies the city's darker side, a stark contrast to the charming streets and historic homes that surround it. To step inside is to confront history in its rawest form: crime, punishment, and death, all coexisting with the persistent whispers of the past. Few places in Charleston carry the same sense of dread, nor inspire the same respect for the weight of history as this decaying, stone-bound relic. For those brave enough to wander its halls, the old city jail offers an experience that is both chilling and unforgettable. Every creaking floorboard, every rattle of iron, every shadow flickering in the corner of the eye serves as a reminder that the past never fully releases those it has claimed. Lavinia Fisher and the countless others who suffered within these walls remain, their presence indelible, ensuring that visitors leave with a sense that the jail is far more than stone and metal. It is a living memory of Charleston's most haunted and harrowing tales. Magnolia Cemetery is a place where Charleston's history and its lingering spirits converge beneath a canopy of ancient oak trees draped in heavy Spanish moss. Established in 1850, it spans acres of land filled with tombstones, mausoleums, and monuments that honor the city, as passed from Confederate soldiers to prominent families who shaped Charleston's social and economic fabric. By day, the cemetery is a place of serene beauty, where the dappled sunlight filters through the leaves and the air is scented with flowers and earth. But when the sun sets, Magnolia Cemetery transforms into something far more mysterious and haunting. A place where the veil between the living and the dead grows impossibly thin. Walking through Magnolia Cemetery at twilight, visitors often feel a chill that has nothing to do with the temperature. The paths wind unpredictably among weathered gravestones and towering monuments, their inscriptions faded by decades of rain and wind. It is here that many report the first signs of the supernatural. Laughter echoing through the air, soft and childlike, with no visible source. Children's giggles seem to drift from corners of the cemetery where no living person treads, and the sound often stops as suddenly as it begins, leaving only the hushed rustle of moss in the trees. Some believe these voices belong to young souls long buried, playing among the graves in a spectral echo of life that once was. Misty figures are another common sight. Visitors describe pale forms moving slowly between the mausoleums, their shapes faint and shifting, as if the light itself struggles to hold them. These apparitions appear for a moment and then vanish, leaving only the suggestion of movement in the shadows. Some witnesses insist they have seen people in Confederate uniforms walking solemnly along the lanes, disappearing when approached. Others report feeling brushed by unseen hands, or catching a fleeting glimpse of a face peering from behind a monument before dissolving into mist. These sightings are never threatening, but they carry an undeniable weight, a reminder that the past refuses to rest quietly. Among the most storied graves in Magnolia Cemetery are those of the crew of the Civil War submarine, H.L. Hunley. The submarine was lost during a mission in 1864, sinking in the waters off Charleston, and when it was recovered decades later, the bodies of the crew were interred in the cemetery. Some visitors and paranormal enthusiasts believe that the men's spirits are still tied to their watery grave, wandering the cemetery as if searching for a final rest that was denied in life. Reports include sudden cold spots near the Hunley Memorial, faint moans echoing across the grounds, and the feeling of being watched while standing before the crew's tombs. The combination of tragedy and heroism seems to have left an indelible mark on the cemetery, ensuring that the men's memory and their unrest lingers still. Photographs taken within Magnolia Cemetery often reveal more than just monuments and trees. Visitors have captured strange lights hovering above graves, or translucent forms in the background of images where no person was present. These orbs and misty shapes have been interpreted as spirits, though skeptics argue that they are merely photographic anomalies. Still, the consistency of reports over decades suggests that something unexplainable exists within the cemetery's bounds, waiting patiently to be noticed by those who wander its winding paths. The trees themselves contribute to the cemetery's haunting atmosphere. Spanish moss drapes from oak branches like spectral veils, swaying even when the air is still, and casting shadows that stretch unnaturally across the graves. In the dim light, the monuments take on the appearance of silent watchers, as though the dead themselves have risen to observe the living intruders among them. Footsteps seem to echo too clearly on the gravel paths, and the occasional rustle of clothing or brush can startle even the most seasoned visitor. Many leave Magnolia Cemetery with an uneasy awareness that they were not entirely alone, and that the past is alive in ways that cannot be explained by history books alone. A sudden weight pressing on the shoulders, an icy touch along the arm, or the impression that someone stands just behind them can make the experience intensely personal and unsettling. These feelings are strongest near the oldest sections of the cemetery, where tombstones date back to the mid-19th century and the history of Charleston's most powerful families intersects with the sorrow of loss and the violence of war. It is as if the energy of those buried there seeps into the air, permeating the cemetery with memories, grief, and unfinished business. The cemetery has also been the site of numerous paranormal investigations, drawing ghost hunters and thrill seekers eager to witness its supernatural reputation firsthand. EVP recordings often pick up faint voices, and motion-sensitive cameras sometimes capture flashes of movement where none should exist. Even those skeptical of the paranormal admit that walking through Magnolia Cemetery after sunset is an experience unlike any other, a mixture of awe, beauty, and unease that lingers long after one leaves the grounds. Despite the fear it can inspire, Magnolia Cemetery remains a place of reverence as well as mystery. It honors the dead, while simultaneously reminding visitors that history is not static, and that the people who shaped Charleston, fought for it, or suffered in it, may still occupy the spaces where their lives ended. It is less a silent resting place than a stage where the past continuously replays. Visible to those willing to notice the echoes among the monuments and the shadows between the trees, Magnolia Cemetery is a testament to Charleston's enduring connection to its history, and to the spirits that inhabit it. Beneath the sprawling oaks, amidst the mist and monuments, the living are reminded that death does not always bring finality. The children who laugh, the misty figures that wander, the crew of the Hunley still searching for Peisel, serve as reminders that the cemetery is alive with memory, grief, and lingering spirits. To walk among the graves is to walk among the stories of Charleston itself, where beauty and sorrow intermingle, and the dead continue to whisper across the ages. The Pink House, nestled in the heart of Charleston, appears at first glance as a cheerful relic of the city's colonial past. Its soft, rosy facade, elegant shutters, and period architecture make it one of the most photographed buildings in the historic district. Tourists flock to admire its charm, imagining the life of a quaint 18th-century tavern or the warm hospitality of its past occupants. Yet beneath this inviting exterior, the Pink House holds a darker story, one that lingers long after the sun sets and the streets grow quiet. The building is not merely a historic landmark. It is a repository of sorrow, suffering, and restless spirits whose presence remains palpable to those who dare to enter. The origins of the Pink House are steeped in mystery. While historical records confirm it operated as a tavern in the 1700s, local legend claims it also functioned as a brothel. Trapped in a life that was often cruel and unforgiving, it is said that many of these women met untimely deaths, their anguish lingering in the rooms where they lived and worked. Over time, this suffering left an imprint on the house itself, an invisible residue that continues to affect those who enter. Tourists may admire its charm by day, but the shadows that lengthen after sunset reveal a much different reality. Visitors to the Pink House often describe sensations that cannot easily be explained. Some report feeling cold touches on their shoulders, fleeting yet unmistakable, as if someone is standing just behind them, brushing past, or guiding them without permission. Others see faint figures drifting across the upstairs windows, blurred and almost ethereal, as though caught between this world and the next. But their presence carries an unmistakable weight of sorrow, a silent reminder of lives constrained by circumstances and hardships that no one should endure. The scent of perfume is another common phenomenon reported within the Pink House. Guests have remarked on delicate fragrances, lingering in empty rooms, heavy with a sweetness that seems misplaced against the backdrop of an otherwise empty interior. Some interpret it as a ghostly signature. Others claim that the perfume appears suddenly, as if drawn to them, intensifying the uncanny atmosphere and reminding visitors that the past is never truly gone. Sightings are often subtle but unforgettable. Guests have recounted glimpsing shadows that move independently of light and reflection, disappearing when approached, or catching the outline of a figure standing near a doorway, only to vanish a moment later. Some have reported the sensation of eyes watching them, heavy and unblinking, even when the room seems entirely vacant. The feeling of being observed, combined with the sudden cold spots and whispers of movement, creates an environment where the ordinary and the supernatural coexist, making the Pink House one of Charleston's most compellingly haunted locations. The upstairs rooms, in particular, carry a reputation for intense paranormal activity, are described by visitors as oppressive yet strangely magnetic. Stepping inside, one may feel a weight pressing against the chest or a sudden drop in temperature that defies explanation. Footsteps echo across the floorboards without a source, and doors may creak open or shut on their own. Those who linger too long often report a sensation of being followed, a presence hovering just out of sight, suggesting that the spirits are still attentive. Despite or perhaps because of its haunted reputation, the Pink House continues to draw visitors. Tourists and paranormal enthusiasts alike come to witness its beauty and sense its energy, seeking both historical insight and supernatural encounters, or disturbances in the air that cannot be explained by wind or light. Whether skeptics or believers, few leave the Pink House unaffected, sensing that the building is alive in ways beyond architecture or history alone. The allure of the Pink House lies in its duality. By day, it delights with its charm, historic significance, and picturesque appearance. By night, it transforms, revealing the hidden layers of suffering and memory embedded in its walls. Their sadness, and the echoes of their presence brushing against the living. For some, the experience is hauntingly beautiful. For others, it is a chilling reminder that history is rarely as tidy as it seems in guidebooks or postcards. Over the years, stories have spread of guests who sense a melancholic energy hovering in the rooms, especially upstairs, where the echoes of the past seem strongest. Patrons describe a sense of being in the presence of someone who is not fully gone, someone tied to the building by experience, memory, and perhaps a lingering grievance. These encounters are often fleeting, the brush of a hand, a fleeting glimpse, but they leave a lasting impression. The Pink House, with its rosy exterior and 18th century charm, reminds visitors that beauty and darkness often coexist. It stands as a monument to Charleston's layered history, celebrating architecture, heritage, and hospitality, while simultaneously preserving the intangible presence of lives once lived within its walls. Those who walk through its rooms, especially as daylight fades, and where the beauty of the building is inseparable from the shadows it holds. The Charleston Naval Base once stood as a proud symbol of American strength, a hub of military operations that bustled with life, discipline, and purpose. Established in the early 20th century, it grew to become one of the most significant naval facilities on the East Coast. Thousands of sailors, officers, and workers passed through its gates, devoting their days to service and their nights to the camaraderie that only a military family can know. But as with so many places tied to war and duty, the echoes of sacrifice have not faded with time. Though the base was officially closed in the 1990s, its legacy lingers, not only in history but, many say, in the restless spirits that still patrol its grounds. Walking through the base today is a surreal experience. Many of the buildings stand abandoned, their windows dark and hollow, their walls crumbling with age. The once busy docks now sit in silence, the waves slapping against empty piers where mighty ships once rested. Grass pushes through cracks in the pavement, nature slowly reclaiming what was once a hive of steel and machinery. Yet despite its quiet exterior, those who visit the old naval base often describe a strange energy and undercurrent of presence that cannot be explained away by the imagination alone. The most common reports involve footsteps. Visitors hear the steady, deliberate rhythm of boots striking pavement, as if sailors are still marching in perfect formation. These phantom footsteps echo through corridors, drift across parade grounds, and rise from stairwells where no living person is present. Tourists who wander into the abandoned barracks often describe hearing doors slam down the hall or lockers rattling in sequence, the unmistakable sounds of a building alive with activity. Yet, when they investigate, they find nothing but silence and emptiness. Shadows are another hallmark of the base's hauntings. Figures have been seen standing in doorways, their outlines clear but their faces obscured. They vanish the moment anyone approaches. Some appear to wear naval uniforms, complete with caps and insignias, while others are darker, shapeless, more like living voids than human spirits. These darker apparitions are particularly unsettling, for they radiate a heavy, oppressive atmosphere, unlike the spirits of sailors who may simply be retracing their steps from a life once lived. Stories circulate of phantom drills carried out long after the last ship left port. Residents of nearby neighborhoods claim to hear the sound of orders shouted across the grounds, followed by the synchronized tramp of marching boots. Sometimes the sharp crack of gunfire echoes faintly through the night, though no live exercises have been conducted there in decades. A few even report hearing the distant wail of alarms, a chilling reminder of wartime readiness that lingers like an old scar on the land. Some of the most unnerving encounters involve buildings tied to tragedy. Accidents at the naval base were not uncommon, from fires in workshops to drownings near the docks. Machinery claimed lives, and training exercises sometimes turned deadly. Many believe these sudden, violent deaths have anchored spirits to the site. The engine rooms are said to be particularly active, with visitors feeling sudden blasts of cold air, smelling oil and smoke, or hearing the metallic clang of tools dropped by invisible hands. Yet not all who haunt the Charleston Naval Base are thought to be former sailors. Whispers persist of darker presences, things that never wore a uniform nor belonged to the ranks of men. Paranormal investigators describe encountering oppressive forces that seem intent on driving them away. Equipment malfunctions in these areas, batteries drain instantly, and recordings capture guttural growls or eerie hisses. Some suggest that the sheer intensity of war, the fear, the violence, the constant presence of death, opened a kind of doorway that allowed otherworldly entities to seep into the base. These are not spirits of the departed, but something older, hungrier, and far less forgiving. One chilling story comes from a former guard who patrolled the base at night after its closure. He described hearing footsteps following close behind him, only to turn and find nothing. Later, he caught sight of a tall, shadowy figure pacing him at a distance. When he shined his flashlight on it, the beam passed through as if the figure were made of smoke. It vanished, but the oppressive feeling of being stalked never left him until he fled the grounds entirely. He never returned. Another tale involves the old hospital on the base, a place where injured sailors once received care. Though the building is now boarded up and falling into disrepair, locals claim to hear moans and cries rising from within at night. Some say they've seen lights flickering in the windows, as if lanterns or lamps were still being used. The hospital, more than any other structure, carries the weight of suffering, and many believe the pain of those who passed there has imprinted itself permanently on the walls. Despite its eerie reputation, the Charleston Naval Base draws curious explorers, history enthusiasts, and ghost hunters alike. Paranormal groups frequently investigate the site, reporting everything from unexplained cold spots to voices captured on recorders. Some leave convinced that the spirits of sailors remain to guard the base, unwilling to abandon their post even in death. Others leave shaken, disturbed by the darker forces they believe prowl the grounds, predators that thrive in places of violence and sorrow. What remains undeniable is the feeling the base gives to nearly everyone who visits. It is not merely an abandoned military site. It is a place heavy with memory, where the past presses against the present in ways that cannot be ignored. Every creak of a door, every echo of phantom marching, every glimpse of a shadow slipping just out of sight reminds visitors that the Charleston Naval Base is not as empty as it appears. Though the ships are gone and the sailors have long since departed, the dead remain. Some patrol the grounds with the same sense of duty they held in life, forever tied to their service. Others linger as echoes of tragedy, their last moments replaying endlessly. And some, darker and more mysterious, claim the base for themselves, feeding on the energy of a place steeped in war, sacrifice, and death. The Charleston Naval Base may be silent now, but it is a silence alive with whispers, footsteps, and watchful eyes. The living have left, but the dead still keep their eternal watch. The fireproof building in Charleston is a marvel of early 19th century design, an architectural achievement meant to protect the fragile documents and records of South Carolina from the ever-present threat of fire. Completed in 1827, its thick masonry walls, iron shutters, and vaulted rooms stood as proof of the ingenuity and determination of a city often scarred by flames. And while the building has succeeded in guarding its archives against disaster, it has failed to shield itself from something even more enduring: the restless presence of the dead. Today, the fireproof building houses the South Carolina Historical Society. Its rooms lined with manuscripts, letters, maps, and journals that tell the stories of centuries past. But visitors who walk its corridors often describe feeling something beyond the weight of history. They speak of sudden chills that sweep across otherwise warm rooms, the prickling sensation of unseen eyes, and the subtle awareness that they are not alone. The very air within the building seems alive, as though the words on parchment are not merely preserved but inhabited by those who wrote them. Staff members, who spend long hours among the collections, often tell of papers that shift on their own. Archivists return to tables to find carefully stacked pages disturbed, documents spread out as if examined by unseen hands. Others describe the faint sound of pages turning in empty rooms, a delicate, deliberate flutter that suggests someone or something is still reading. These occurrences, repeated often enough to be impossible to dismiss, give rise to the belief that the spirits of those chronicled in the archives refuse to be silenced, their voices echoing through ink and paper even after centuries have passed. Reflections, too, carry unsettling surprises. Employees have reported seeing figures in glass display cases or catching movement in mirrors when no one else is present. Sometimes it is only a fleeting shadow, a form that vanishes the moment it is noticed. Other times, the visions are more distinct faces peering back, dressed in clothing from another age, gazing with a mournful intensity before fading like smoke. These encounters are rarely accompanied by menace, but rather a solemn insistence, as if the spirits want acknowledgement, a recognition that their lives still matter. The building's archives seem to act as a magnet for paranormal activity. Rows of shelves packed with journals and records emanate a peculiar energy, and those who work there describe a heavy stillness, broken by soft whispers that seem to rise from between the bindings. Some have heard voices, low and indistinct, carrying the rhythm of conversation, but offering no clear words. A few even claim to have heard their own names called, spoken in tones that chill the heart. For many, the experience feels less like haunting and more like communion, the dead, eager to ensure that their stories are not forgotten, reaching out through the only medium they have left. Certain reports suggest that the spirits inside the fireproof building are not only guardians of memory, but also fragments of memory itself, tethered to the words they once penned. Letters from soldiers, journals of explorers, records of tragedies, and triumphs. These intimate windows into human lives seem to carry an essence that refuses to fade. Staff have told of moments when a strange compulsion drew their eyes to particular documents, as though guided by unseen hands. In some cases, the chosen texts revealed heartbreaking accounts of lives cut short, lost loves, or unfulfilled ambitions, dailies that resonate even in death. The architecture of the fireproof building only deepens its atmosphere. Its thick brick walls and vaulted ceilings hold sound in peculiar ways, producing echoes that confuse the senses. A single footstep can reverberate like many, while a whisper may travel farther than expected, creating the illusion of unseen companions. At night, when the halls are dim and the city quiet, these echoes grow stronger, turning the building into a chamber of lingering presences. Heavy iron doors creak open as though pushed from the other side, and corridors seem to breathe with the rhythm of past centuries. Investigators of the paranormal have long been fascinated by the fireproof building. Many who bring recorders capture faint voices, whispers, sighs, and even laughter. Though the rooms are empty, cameras sometimes catch strange lights, orbs drifting between the shelves, or shadowy shapes sliding past doorways. Temperature readings fluctuate without cause, sudden drops of 10 or 20 degrees localized in a single spot. Those who have conducted or vigils in the archives often describe overwhelming sensations of presence, a crowd of unseen witnesses pressing in, unwilling to be ignored. Despite these unnerving accounts, The spirits of the fireproof building are rarely thought to be hostile. They are watchful, sometimes insistent, but seldom malicious. For many who encounter them, there is even a sense of reverence, as though standing in the company of the city's collective memory. The ghosts here are not bound by tragedy alone, but by the power of remembrance, tethered to the very records that ensure their lives continue to have meaning. The building is not a prison for spirits, it is a sanctuary where they linger, bound to the ink and parchment that hold their names. Visitors often leave with a profound sense of awe, describing the fireproof building as more than a historical site. It is a place where the veil between past and present feels thin, where the line between memory and haunting blurs. Walking its halls is not just a journey through South Carolina's history, but an encounter with the living presence of that history itself. Every creak of the floorboards, every flutter of unseen pages, is a reminder that history is not silent, it is alive, breathing, and unwilling to be forgotten. The fireproof building was designed to resist flames, and in that it has triumphed. But no amount of masonry or iron can bar the passage of spirits. Within its walls, the dead persist, weaving their presence into the very fabric of the archives. It is a place where the past rises from the page, where ghosts lean close to ensure their stories are heard, and where silence is never truly empty. The fireproof building protects against fire, but nothing shields it from the dead, who walk its corridors still, guardians of memory and keepers of the past. The fireproof building of Charleston is more than just an architectural marvel. It is a vessel of history, memory, and lingering spirits. Constructed in 1827 to withstand devastating urban fires, its thick brick walls, iron shutters, and carefully designed vaults ensured the preservation of Charleston's most important documents, books, and archives. Today, as the home of the South Carolina Historical Society, the building safeguards centuries of the state's history. Yet, despite its fireproof design, it cannot protect itself from the restless spirits who seem bound to its halls, drawn to the lives and stories it preserves. Visitors and staff alike report subtle but unmistakable signs that the building is alive in more ways than one. A sudden chill may sweep through a corridor, floorboards creak under invisible footsteps, or papers rustle in the archives without cause. Archivists have found stacks of documents shifted or pages turned despite careful arrangement, leading many to believe that the spirits of those chronicled in the archives are restless, refusing to be confined to ink and parchment alone. These disturbances are not violent, but they are persistent, a quiet insistence that the stories contained here are alive and demand attention. Reflective surfaces often reveal glimpses of the unusual. Employees have occasionally seen shadowy figures lingering behind them or moving through corridors when no one else is present. These apparitions are rarely menacing. Instead, they seem attentive, as if the dead are observing the preservation of their own legacies. Visitors sometimes sense an invisible presence following them or watching over their shoulders, as though the building itself insists that history is not simply to be read, but acknowledged and experienced. The archives serve as a central focus for paranormal activity. Shelves filled with meticulously cataloged books and records seem to hum with unseen energy. Faint whispers emerge from between the stacks, indistinct yet often carrying the cadence of human speech. Chairs creak, drawers open and close of their own accord, and lights occasionally flicker in rooms untouched by the living. Those who spend time among these documents describe a sensation of being observed, guided, or even studied, as if the spirits attached to the records are active participants in the life of the building. Some spirits are believed to be more than mere observers. They are the living memories of individuals whose lives are documented here. Letters, diaries, photographs, and official records preserve personal triumphs and tragedies. And it is said that some of those chronicled remain tied to the building, their essence bound to the written word. Staff members have reported the feeling of someone leaning close to read over their shoulder or subtly guiding their attention towards specific documents, almost like a spectral curator, ensuring that these stories remain remembered. Apparitions often manifest subtly, a fleeting shadow along a hallway, the sensation of someone brushing past, or the momentary glimpse of a figure standing near a doorway. These encounters are rarely frightening. Rather, they create an atmosphere of reverence and curiosity. Many who visit or work in the fireproof building report a profound awareness of history itself, a feeling that the past presses close, and that the lives documented within these walls continue to exist, in some form, alongside the living. The building's architectural features amplify its haunting presence. Thick walls and narrow corridors create pockets where sound travels strangely, amplifying faint noises and creating echoes that seem to come from nowhere. Iron shutters and heavy doors add to the sense of containment, suggesting that the building is not just a repository of documents, but a vessel for energy, memory, and spectral presence. Walking its halls at night, one may hear footsteps overhead or below, or catch the faint whisper of a name long since forgotten by the living. Paranormal investigators have frequently explored the fireproof building, drawn by its history and reputation. Recordings often capture unexplained sounds, faint voices, rustling papers in empty rooms, and sudden temperature drops. Cameras sometimes reveal fleeting shadows or unidentifiable movement. For those sensitive to the supernatural, the building offers an encounter with history that is as immediate as it is unsettling. A place where the past is not simply remembered, but actively present. Despite its ghostly reputation, the fireproof building remains cherished and revered. It continues to protect South Carolina's historical treasures, while serving as a bridge between the living and the dead. Researchers, patrons, and casual visitors alike are drawn to its unique energy, experiencing both the weight of history and the subtle presence of spirits who refuse to rest. These ghosts, far from menacing, seem invested in preserving memory, ensuring that the stories contained within these walls endure. The fireproof building exemplifies the intersection of past and present, the material and spiritual. Architecture safeguards documents, while the walls simultaneously safeguard memories and spirits. Every creak of the floorboards, flutter of a page, or flicker of movement serves as a reminder that history is never truly silent. In Charleston, the fireproof building is not merely a historical repository. It is a guardian of souls, preserving both the living narrative and the lingering presence of those who shaped it. Constructed to resist fire and protect Charleston's treasures, the fireproof building has become something more, a vessel for memory, history, and the supernatural. Nothing shields it from the dead, and they have made their presence known. The stories within these walls are alive, and those who enter cannot help but feel the past walking alongside them. Insistent and undeniable, demanding to be remembered, the Dock Street Hotel, now part of Charleston's historic French Quarter, sits on a site steeped in centuries of history, intrigue, and restless spirits. Once a bustling area of merchants, sailors, and families, the French Quarter was the heart of trade and social life in Charleston, with cobblestone streets, period architecture, and a vibrant mix of cultures. Today, modern hotels occupy these historic buildings, but despite renovations and modern amenities, guests often report experiences that hint at a world beyond the living. The Dock Street Hotel, built upon this storied site, seems to preserve the echoes of the past shadows of lives long gone that refuse to remain silent. Visitors and staff frequently report unexplained occurrences throughout the hotel. Figures dressed in period clothing, silks, frock coats, and long dresses reminiscent of Charleston's 18th and 19th century. Residents have been seen standing silently at the foot of beds or moving along the hallways. Guests often awaken to find these apparitions merely observing, neither hostile nor communicative, before fading into the air as if they were never there. Some describe the sensation of a presence brushing past them in the night, a weight of unseen attention that is impossible to ignore. Whispers in French are another common report, a lingering reminder of the cultural mix that once defined the area. These murmurs are faint but distinct, echoing along hallways, bouncing off walls, and seeming to come from rooms long empty. The words are rarely coherent, yet they create a vivid impression of the lives that once animated the building. Many guests have confessed to pausing, listening intently, convinced that they are hearing arguments, laughter, or tender words exchanged by people who have long since passed. The experience is haunting, yet strangely poetic, a glimpse into a past that refuses to vanish. Doors and locks in the Dock Street Hotel often behave in ways that defy explanation. Some doors slam shut or swing open without a breeze. Locks engage without human intervention. Staff have recounted moments when they returned to rooms to find doors mysteriously secured, only to open them without difficulty minutes later. These phenomena are never violent, but they reinforce the notion that the building is more than brick and mortar, that it is alive with the memories, emotions, and unfinished business of those who once inhabited it. Many of the spirits believed to haunt the site are thought to be sailors, merchants, and lovers who lived during Charleston's bustling colonial and post-colonial eras. The port city drew people from across the globe, and the French Quarter was a hub of commerce, romance, and occasional tragedy. Sailors lost at sea, merchants who died suddenly, and lovers separated by circumstance are said to wander the streets and halls, their energy lingering as the centuries pass. Guests report feeling watched while walking the corridors, or sensing footsteps trailing behind them, only to find the halls empty when they turn. It is as if the spirits continue their routines, moving seamlessly through the modern world while remaining tethered to the past. The historical richness of the site seems to amplify these occurrences. Guests have described seeing chairs move slightly, the faint clinking of glasses, or the rustle of period clothing when the rooms are otherwise vacant. Some claim to witness shadowy figures reflected in mirrors or glass panels, glancing in their direction before vanishing. The energy is not always concentrated in one room. It drifts like a breeze through the building, following the invisible paths of the lives it preserves. The Dock Street Hotel becomes a stage where the past and present intersect, where memories are not static but active, shaping the experiences of those who enter. Staff members are often the most familiar with the hotel's peculiarities. They speak of lights flickering in rooms that have been cleared, distant voices echoing across the halls, and items inexplicably moving from one place to another. Many interpret these events not as malevolent hauntings, but as the lingering presence of people bound to the site by emotion, history, or unfinished business. Guests, on the other hand, experience these phenomena more acutely during the quiet hours of the night. When the bustle of the city fades and the whispers of centuries past grow louder, the Dock Street Hotel's location in the French Quarter adds to the pervasive sense of history and haunting. The area itself is a living museum, with cobblestone streets, preserved architecture, and the sense that Charleston's past remains just beneath the surface. It is easy to imagine the countless people who lived, worked, loved, and suffered here: merchants negotiating deals, sailors returning from distant ports, and lovers walking hand in hand. The spirits attached to this place appear to have carried their routines, their joys, and their regrets forward into the present, allowing modern visitors to glimpse a Charleston that exists only in echoes. Paranormal investigators drawn to the Dock Street Hotel have reported capturing fleeting shadows, unexplained sounds, and even EVP's electronic voice, phenomena featuring whispers and soft conversations in French. Cameras occasionally record movement or light anomalies that cannot be accounted for by passing guests or staff. Some investigators report feeling a presence beside them, or hearing footsteps pacing overhead in empty hallways. These experiences reinforce the idea that the spirits here are not only numerous, but conscious, aware of the living who walk their halls, and unwilling to be ignored. The Dock Street Hotel, built on the foundation of Charleston's French Quarter, reminds visitors that the past is never entirely gone. While its walls preserve history and documents, architecture, and design, they also hold intangible echoes of lives once lived. Guests encounter whispers, footsteps, and fleeting apparitions that connect them directly to the city's rich and layered history. The French Quarter's spirits have not left. They drift between buildings, watching, listening, and occasionally interacting with the living. The Dock Street Hotel is a place where centuries converge, and where the dead continue to roam, eternally tied to Charleston's streets, corridors, and memories. The Charleston Library Society, founded in 1748, stands as one of the oldest subscription libraries in the United States. For centuries, it has been a sanctuary of knowledge, a quiet refuge for scholars, writers, and curious minds seeking to immerse themselves in books, manuscripts, and historical documents. Its halls and stacks have witnessed the passage of countless readers, from colonial thinkers to modern researchers. Yet, beyond the tangible wealth of literature, the library harbors something far less tangible, a presence that lingers in the silence, a restless energy tied to the countless lives that have crossed its thresholds. Visitors and staff often describe subtle, eerie occurrences that hint at a world beyond the living. The first signs are usually simple pages rustling on their own, the faint creak of floorboards in empty corridors, or a whisper just at the edge of hearing. Archivists have recounted moments when documents and books appear to have been shifted or opened without explanation, as though unseen hands were handling them. Some attribute this to the librarians and scholars of centuries past, bound to the library by devotion to knowledge, unwilling to leave their beloved books behind even after death. The library's stacks are the epicenter of many of these experiences. Shelves lined with leather-bound tomes and delicate manuscripts create narrow corridors that seem to amplify every sound, whether natural or supernatural. Footsteps echo along the aisles where no one walks, and visitors have reported seeing shadows moving just beyond their line of sight. Reflections in glass display cases occasionally reveal indistinct figures standing in the background, vanishing when approached. These glimpses are rarely frightening, but they carry a persistent sense of awareness, as if the library itself and its long-departed caretakers remains vigilant. Whispers are a common phenomenon at the Charleston Library Society. Patrons have reported hearing soft conversations in hushed tones, debates about literature, or the simple turning of pages, all emanating from areas that appear empty. Some hear names being called, or instructions murmured as if a librarian were guiding a patron to a specific shelf. At times, these whispers have been in languages long abandoned, a reminder of the library's colonial past and the diverse voices that have passed through its doors over the centuries. The effect is both unsettling and oddly reverent, creating a palpable sense that the past is watching over the present. Certain rooms in the library are particularly charged with this presence. Rare book rooms, archives, and reading areas often exhibit unexplained phenomena. Sudden temperature drops, flickering lights, or a soft rustling as though someone were moving along the shelves. Staff members have described an almost physical sensation of being observed, of unseen eyes following their movements through the stacks. Even the sound of chairs shifting or the distant tapping of fingers across desks can occur when no living person is nearby. These moments imbue the library with a sense of living history, where the line between past and present becomes blurred. Some believe that the spirits inhabiting the Charleston Library Society are guardians rather than intruders. These spectral librarians may continue to tend to the collection, ensuring that knowledge is preserved and that the stories within the books are respected. The shifting of pages or the turning of manuscripts could be interpreted as guidance or instruction, a gentle nudge to visitors to pay closer attention, to listen to the lessons encoded in the words. The energy is rarely malevolent. It is insistent, persistent, and deeply tied to the love of learning. Yet not all who experience the library's hauntings interpret them positively. A few speak of darker presences, hidden among the shelves, feeding on silence and curiosity. These manifestations are described as a subtle weight, a pressure that seems to grow in quiet rooms, or fleeting glimpses of figures that vanish when approached. Some visitors report a feeling of dread, an almost instinctual warning to move quickly through certain areas. These darker energies may be a product of the centuries of accumulated knowledge, the emotions embedded in the texts, or the sheer intensity of the library's history. Whatever the cause, they add a layer of tension to the otherwise serene environment. Over the years, paranormal investigators have been drawn to the Charleston Library Society, hoping to capture evidence of its otherworldly inhabitants. Reports include strange audio recordings, EVP sessions capturing faint whispers or page-turning sounds, and photographic anomalies, shadows, streaks of light, or blurred figures appearing among the stacks. Some investigators have felt the sensation of being lightly touched or followed, as if a presence was leading them through the library, guiding them along hidden paths or toward specific books. The consistency of these reports lends credibility to the idea that the library is not only alive in spirit, but actively interactive with those who enter its domain. For visitors, the library is both a place of learning and a portal to the past. Walking among the stacks, one can almost feel the lives of scholars long gone, the quiet devotion of librarians who never left, and the accumulated energy of centuries of reading, study, and discovery. Every whisper, creak, and flicker seems to tell a story of its own, reminding the living that history is never entirely gone. The Charleston Library Society becomes a place where the present moment coexists with centuries of memory, a space where knowledge and spirit are intertwined. In Charleston, where history is palpable on every street corner, the Library Society offers a unique encounter with the past. Its books preserve the knowledge of generations, while its walls harbor the silent presence of those who cherished that knowledge. Visitors leave with more than just intellectual enrichment. They carry with them the awareness that the library is not merely a building of paper and ink. It is a home for spirits who refuse to be forgotten, guardians of stories that demand to be heard, seen, and remembered. The Charleston Library Society may stand as a haven of learning, but it is also a sanctuary for the unseen. Books hold knowledge, but here they hold ghosts as well, spirits of devoted librarians, scholars, and perhaps even darker entities, each silently ensuring that the past remains alive, attentive, and ever-present. St. Michael's Church stands as a steadfast sentinel over Charleston, its white steeple visible for miles, a symbol of faith, history, and the passage of time. Constructed in the 1760s, it is the oldest surviving religious structure in the city, a place where generations have gathered to worship, celebrate, and mourn. The church has witnessed centuries of Charleston's history, from colonial battles and revolutionary upheaval to hurricanes and fire. Its bells have tolled for momentous occasions, warning citizens of danger, announcing weddings, and mourning the departed. Yet beneath its serene facade lies a different presence, one that lingers long after services have ended, one that whispers among the gravestones and echoes through the empty nave. The graveyard surrounding St. Michael's Church is as historic as the building itself. Weathered stones lean under the weight of centuries, inscriptions fading but still legible to those who pause to read. Here lie soldiers, city leaders, and ordinary citizens, all bound to the city in life and, it seems, in death. Visitors to the cemetery frequently report strange experiences. One of the most commonly described is the figure of a man dressed in colonial attire, walking solemnly among the tombstones. He moves deliberately, head bowed, often stopping as if in reflection, but when approached, he vanishes without a trace. Some speculate he is a soldier from the Revolutionary era, condemned to wander the cemetery for reasons unknown, a ghost tethered to the land he once defended. Inside the church itself, the sense of the supernatural continues. Parishioners and staff have described hearing organ music when the building is empty and locked, notes drifting through the nave as though someone unseen is practicing or performing a long-forgotten hymn. The sound is soft yet unmistakable, filling the church with an eerie reverence. Lights sometimes flicker without cause, and shadows stretch and shift across the pews, even in full daylight. Occasionally, visitors have glimpsed figures moving behind the altar or in the corners of the church, always just out of clear view, leaving behind only a sense of presence. The bell tower, historically used to alert the city to danger, is itself a conduit for ghostly energy. The sound is somber, almost mournful, and it seems to resonate not just in the air, but in the chest of those who hear it, evoking memories of warnings, farewells, and long-forgotten ceremonies. For many, the church is both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead is thin and porous. St. Michael's Church has hosted countless historical figures. Presidents have sat in its pews, Military leaders have sought guidance within its walls, and ordinary citizens have marked life's milestones here. The ghosts of the past, however, pay no attention to rank or status. They are drawn instead to the essence of the church itself, the prayers, the rituals, and the human energy concentrated over centuries. Footsteps echo in empty hallways, whispers drift along the stone floors, and cold spots appear unexpectedly, often where no drafts could reach. Many believe these manifestations are not malevolent, but are the remnants of lives intertwined with the building, souls lingering where they once found meaning or solace. Paranormal investigators and historians alike have been captivated by St. Michael's Church. EVP recordings sometimes capture distant murmurs, the faint rustle of robes, or the soft tolling of bells that cannot be explained by mechanical means. Cameras occasionally pick up faint apparitions or shadowy shapes, particularly in the graveyard or near the altar. Investigators often describe a feeling of being watched or guided, as if the spirits are both aware of the living and intent on maintaining their presence in the sacred space. Stories passed down by visitors and clergy alike hint at the depth of the church's spectral history. One account tells of a colonial-era gentleman seen kneeling by a gravestone, pausing as if to pray, and then slowly walking through the church doors before vanishing. Another recalls a visitor startled by the sound of distant footsteps climbing the stairs to the bell tower, only to find it empty upon investigation. Even those unfamiliar with ghost lore often feel a profound sense of presence here, a reminder that faith does not always grant peace to the dead. The graveyard and the church's interior together create an atmosphere where history is palpable. The weight of centuries presses gently on the living, a mixture of awe, reverence, and unease. The dead do not merely rest here. They move, observe, and sometimes communicate in subtle ways. For visitors, the experience is immersive. The past is not confined to plaques or inscriptions, but feels alive, coexisting with the present in the cool shadows of the nave or the moss-draped stones outside. St. Michael's Church serves as a beacon of faith, yet it is also a reminder that faith alone cannot always quiet the restless dead. Soldiers, city leaders, and ordinary citizens alike appear to have left their mark not only in history books, but in the very fabric of the church and cemetery. Their presence, felt in footsteps, whispers, music, and fleeting figures, is a testament to the enduring connection between the living and the dead, between Charleston's past and its present. For those who wander the graveyard at twilight or step into the nave after hours, the experience is both humbling and chilling. Every footstep on the stone floor, every creak of the pews, and every faint note of music seems to remind visitors that St. Michael's Church is more than a building. It is a home for memories, a witness to centuries of human devotion, and a haven for spirits who have chosen to linger long after their mortal lives ended. In Charleston, where history is tangible on every street, St. Michael's Church stands as a powerful reminder that some souls cannot tour, will not trust. Charleston's Pirate House, tucked away on the cobblestone streets of the historic district, seems at first to be an unassuming building, a relic of colonial architecture, quietly nestled among shops and restaurants. But behind its charming facade lies a history steeped in danger, intrigue, and blood. Local legend claims that during the 1700s, the building served as a hideout for pirates, a place where buccaneers could rest, plot, and stash their spoils before slipping back out to sea. Some say secret tunnels once connected the pirate house to the nearby harbor, allowing stolen treasures and, sometimes the bodies of unfortunate victims to be moved unseen. These stories of greed, violence, and secrecy have left a lingering mark, one that continues to echo through the centuries in the form of restless spirits. Visitors to the Pirate House frequently recount strange experiences that suggest the past is far from gone. Heavy boots seem to stomp across the wooden floors when no one else is present, the sound reverberating through empty halls with a weight that feels almost threatening. Doors slam on their own, rattling in their hinges, startling patrons and staff alike. Some guests report hearing faint laughter carried eerily through the night air, a sound both playful and sinister. as if the pirates themselves are amused by those who wander into their domain. Even the most skeptical visitors admit to a chill in the air, a sudden sense of being watched by unseen eyes. The building's architecture seems to amplify these experiences. Low ceilings, narrow hallways, and thick wooden beams create pockets where sound carries in unusual ways, allowing whispers, footsteps, and laughter to echo and shift as though moving independently. Some rooms feel heavy, as if an unseen presence is standing close by, while others are unnaturally cold, sending shivers down the spine even on warm Charleston nights. Patrons often describe the sensation of being followed, of shadows brushing against them, or of sudden movements in the corner of their vision, vanishing the moment they turn to look. Local lore holds that some of the most dangerous spirits belong to pirates who were never caught, men whose greed and violence bound them to the site long after death. These apparitions are said to be fiercely protective of their treasures, willing to confront anyone who ventures too close. Patrons have occasionally reported objects moving inexplicably, silver coin rolling across the floor, a chair shifting as if someone had sat and left, or a chest rattling as though its contents were being inspected. The energy in the building is unpredictable. It can be playful, teasing, or threatening, reflecting the volatile nature of those who once inhabited it. Staff at the Pirate House have shared chilling accounts that underscore the building's haunted reputation. One bartender reported glasses clinking together in a pattern that seemed almost like laughter, though no one was near. Another employee described feeling a hand graze their shoulder while stacking plates, only to turn and find the room empty. Occasionally, late-night visitors glimpse shadowy figures drifting through the dining rooms or catch a glimpse of a face staring from the top of the stairs. These experiences are not confined to any single part of the building. The ghosts move freely, much like the pirates they are said to embody, patrolling their territory and keeping a silent, watchful guard. The rumored secret tunnels add another layer of intrigue, though many have long since been sealed or destroyed. The idea that hidden passageways once led from the pirate house to the harbor adds a tangible sense of danger. Patrons and paranormal enthusiasts alike speculate that some of the spirits wander these long-forgotten corridors, retracing the paths they used to transport treasure or evade capture. Some visitors claim to feel sudden cold drafts or hear muffled footsteps beneath the floorboards, as though the echoes of smuggling operations and illicit meetings have imprinted themselves into the very foundation of the building. Even the sounds of the harbor seem to interact with the pirate house's spectral residents. On quiet nights, the distant creak of rigging or the slap of waves against the docks seems to resonate inside the building. Patrons have reported hearing whispers in time with these maritime sounds, as if the ghosts are in rhythm with the long-departed ships they once served. It is as though the past and present overlap, with the ghosts using the familiar patterns of the harbor to navigate and assert their presence. Paranormal investigators have taken an interest in the pirate house, drawn by its notorious history and consistent reports of hauntings. EVP sessions sometimes capture laughter, the scrape of boots, or faint whispers that cannot be attributed to any living source. Cameras occasionally reveal fleeting shadows or moving objects, providing visual corroboration for the auditory phenomena. Investigators often describe the building as charged, a place where centuries of violence, greed, and secrecy have left an energy that refuses to dissipate. For visitors, the experience is visceral. Eating a meal or enjoying a drink in the pirate house is punctuated by moments of unease, the sensation that unseen eyes are watching, that the history of the building is active and present. Even those skeptical of ghosts cannot ignore the uncanny timing of sounds, movements, and chills. In this way, the Pirate House functions as more than a restaurant or historical site, is a living connection to Charleston's murky, dangerous past, a place where the stories of pirates are not confined to books, but continue to play out in the present. Charleston's Pirate House remains a compelling and unsettling testament to the city's darker history. Its floors and walls echo with the footsteps and laughter of buccaneers long gone, guardians of secrets and treasures, observers of the living who dared to enter. Visitors leave with more than just a taste of history. They leave with the palpable sense that some spirits are never at rest, that greed, mischief, and danger can linger long after life has ended, and that the pirate house will forever be haunted by those who called it their own. The circular Congregational Church, with its distinctive round architecture and weathered graveyard, stands as one of Charleston's oldest houses of worship. Established in the 1700s, it has witnessed centuries of history, from the city's colonial beginnings to the present day. Its unique circular design has long drawn attention, symbolizing eternity and unity. Yet beneath its architectural charm lies a darker, more restless presence. The church and its surrounding cemetery are said to be among the most haunted sites in Charleston, a place where the past refuses to remain buried and the voices of long-dead settlers still echo through the night. Visitors to the church often speak of an immediate sense of presence, as if the very air carries the weight of centuries. The cemetery, resting beside the church, holds the remains of some of Charleston's earliest settlers. Moss-draped headstones lean precariously, etched with names and dates long faded. Amid the quiet rows of graves, witnesses describe seeing glowing orbs floating between the stones, weaving through the cemetery as though guiding unseen paths or observing the living. These lights are often described as soft, ethereal, and almost playful, yet they carry a sense of purpose, as though the spirits themselves are aware of intruders in their domain. The church itself seems alive with residual energy. Many visitors report hearing faint hymns drifting through the nave during the late hours, even when the building is locked and empty. The music is seldom coherent, more like the echo of voices long past, singing together, sometimes rising into full notes before fading suddenly into silence. Some claim to hear whispers accompanying the hymns, soft murmurings that hint at conversations, prayers, or lingering regrets. These sounds create a hauntingly beautiful atmosphere, both reverent and unsettling, as though the church's history refuses to remain confined to stone and wood. Patrons walking through the nave or along the aisles report feeling the icy grip of unseen hands on their shoulders or arms. These touches are fleeting but undeniable, leaving a shiver that lingers long after the sensation fades. Many describe a sense of being watched, an invisible congregation observing their movements, as though centuries of devotion, joy, and sorrow have left a permanent imprint on the building itself. Some of the most startling experiences occur near the cemetery's oldest graves. Glimpses of shadowy figures flitting between the headstones, often seen from the corner of the eye, vanish when directly observed. Footsteps echo along the stone paths, yet, when visitors turn to investigate, no one is there. Occasionally, the soft rustle of clothing or the faint smell of old incense lingers in the air, suggesting the presence of spirits still tied to the rituals once performed in life. Witnesses often describe a profound sense of continuity, a feeling that the past is not separate from the present but constantly intertwined, the circle unbroken. The church's round design seems to amplify the haunting experience. Sound travels differently within the circular walls, allowing whispers, footsteps, and distant murmurs to carry in unusual ways. A conversation in one corner may appear to come from the opposite side, and music or echoes from the past can swirl around the nave like a living entity. Visitors often describe feeling disoriented, as if the building itself is guiding them, subtly directing their path while exposing them to its hidden layers of history and presence. Local lore suggests that the spirits are not merely echoes, but the conscious remnants of those buried nearby. Settlers, ministers, and parishioners who once walked these grounds seem to have lingered, bound to the site by faith, devotion, or unfinished business. Some accounts describe figures standing silently at the edges of the cemetery, watching over the graves, while others recount fleeting glimpses of people in period clothing moving through the church or yard. Their actions are rarely threatening, though the intensity of their presence can be overwhelming, especially at night when the city is quiet. Paranormal investigators, drawn to the circular Congregational Church, often report evidence of supernatural activity. Electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, capture faint whispers and distant singing, Cameras sometimes reveal orbs, shadows, or faint figures that cannot be explained by natural light or reflections. Temperature fluctuations, sudden drafts, and the sensation of unseen pressure are common, reinforcing the impression that this is a space charged with spiritual energy. Investigators frequently note that the church is not malevolent, but rather a vessel of memory and presence, where history actively asserts itself upon the living. Visitors to the circular Congregational Church describe a spectrum of experiences, from the awe-inspiring to the chilling. Walking among the graves at twilight or sitting quietly in the nave after hours, one can feel the connection to centuries past. Every rustle of leaves, every distant echo of a hymn, every fleeting glow of an orb serves as a reminder that the circle of life and death is unbroken here. It is a place where the past is not only remembered but experienced, where the spirits of Charleston's earliest settlers maintain a subtle but undeniable presence. In Charleston, a city steeped in history and shadowed by centuries of lives intertwined, the circular Congregational Church stands as a unique testament to both faith and the supernatural. Its round walls shelter not only the living but also the persistent echoes of the dead. Glowing orbs, spectral hymns, and unseen touches invite visitors to step into a space where the boundaries between past and present blur. The circular Congregational Church is a sacred and haunted site, where the voices of the dead continue to rise. And the past, ever watchful, is never truly gone. Beneath the bustling streets of Charleston lies a hidden world few dare to explore, the Exchange Street tunnels. These forgotten passageways, carved into the city's foundation centuries ago, were originally used for storage, trade, and, according to local lore, smuggling contraband under the cover of darkness. Over time, the tunnels became shrouded in rumor, whispered about in hushed tones by those who live above them. Stories of disappearances, eerie sounds, and restless spirits have transformed them from simple subterranean corridors into one of Charleston's most haunted and mysterious locales. The tunnels themselves are narrow and winding, lined with rough-hewn brick and worn stone. Portions of the underground network have collapsed or been sealed over the years, but enough remain to inspire fear and fascination. Visitors report an immediate sense of unease when approaching manholes or storm drains rumored to lead into these hidden corridors. The air often feels colder near these entry points, carrying a damp, earthy scent that seems heavier than the city streets above. Some say this chill is the first warning, a subtle, yet persistent, reminder that the tunnels are not empty. Locals have long whispered of strange sounds emanating from beneath Exchange Street, echoing through the storm drains and alleyways above. Footsteps reverberate in the darkness, following the rhythm of an unseen procession. Occasionally, a distant metallic clang or the sound of a door slamming is reported. Though no entrances exist in the immediate vicinity, these noises are irregular and unpredictable, amplifying the sense that the tunnels are alive, or at the very least, inhabited by those who no longer walk among the living. Some claim the tunnels have been used for far darker purposes than smuggling goods. Stories abound of clandestine meetings, punishments, and even disappearances. Those who venture too far into the network are said to feel a growing sense of disorientation, as if the tunnels themselves are reshaping to trap intruders. Cold air pockets appear suddenly, accompanied by the sensation of unseen hands brushing past or gripping at clothing. Patrons who linger too long often report an overwhelming urge to flee, their instincts warning them that the tunnels are not merely passageways but thresholds to something far older and more sinister. The supernatural activity reported in the Exchange Street tunnels is varied. Some visitors hear whispering voices that seem to follow them from chamber to chamber, murmuring in languages long forgotten. Others describe phantom footsteps, heavy and deliberate, approaching from behind, only to vanish when confronted. Shadowy figures have been glimpsed in fleeting moments, slipping along the walls or through dark corners where no one should be. Often, the most chilling experiences involve a sudden drop in temperature, accompanied by the feeling of being watched and awareness that someone or something is tracking every movement. Paranormal investigators have periodically ventured into these tunnels, armed with cameras, audio recorders, and other equipment. Many report capturing unexplained sounds, from low groans and whispers to the faint clatter of objects moving without contact. Some investigators describe a sensation of presence, a heavy energy pressing in from all sides, as if the tunnels themselves are conscious and aware of intruders. Those sensitive to paranormal phenomena often leave with the impression that the tunnels are more than abandoned storage spaces. They are a liminal realm, a place where the living and the dead intersect. The history of Charleston lends credence to these tales. Exchange Street was once a hub of trade, crime, and clandestine activity. Smugglers may have carried contraband, pirates may have hid loot, and fugitives may have sought refuge underground. Each act of desperation or secrecy has left a mark, it is said, and over time, these events have coalesced into an energy that remains palpable to anyone daring enough to enter. It is as if the walls themselves remember every footstep, every whispered conversation, every act of violence, holding them in memory long after the city above has moved on. Many who attempt to explore the tunnels, report feeling a growing sense of urgency, as though the passages themselves are shifting, preventing exit or delaying escape. Panic sets in quickly in the darkness. Maps are unreliable, and landmarks often appear and disappear in the dim light. Some claim to have felt fingers grazing their shoulders, whispers of unseen figures urging them onward, or a cold presence brushing past their legs. Even those who manage to leave describe an unsettling after-effect, dreams haunted by the tunnels, recurring feelings of being followed, and the impression that something unseen has crossed into the world above. Despite the danger, the tunnels continue to fascinate both locals and tourists. Urban explorers and thrill-seekers are drawn to the stories, the history, and the possibility of encountering something otherworldly. The combination of historical significance, architectural mystery, and supernatural reputation makes the Exchange Street tunnels a site of both allure and terror. While many stories may be exaggerated over time, the consistency of reports and the palpable atmosphere suggest that the tunnels are indeed more than empty underground corridors. In Charleston, a city steeped in centuries of history, the Exchange Street tunnels serve as a reminder that the past is never truly buried. Beneath the streets, in darkness and silence, the echoes of forgotten lives, secret dealings, and perhaps even restless spirits linger. Those who venture near or into the tunnels cannot help but sense that they are trespassing into a world where the living and dead coexist, a shadowy labyrinth that guards its secrets jealously, and from which few emerge entirely unchanged. The Exchange Street tunnels are more than historical relics. They are a threshold to the hidden, the haunted, and the unknowable. The past pulses beneath the city, alive with memory, mystery, and a presence that refuses to rest. For Charleston, and for those daring enough to descend into the darkness, the tunnels remain a chilling testament to the unseen, the forgotten, and the eternal. Perched elegantly above Charleston Harbor, the Austin House is a stately reminder of the city's rich history and turbulent past. Built in 1825, its white columned facade and expansive balconies reflect the grandeur of antebellum Charleston. From these vantage points, generations of families have observed the changing tides of the harbor, the passage of ships, and the slow transformation of the city. Yet, while the house is celebrated today as a museum and historic landmark, it is also a place where the past refuses to stay quiet. The spirits of war, of fear, and of those who lived and died within its walls linger, ensuring that history is not merely remembered but felt. The Austin House played a subtle yet significant role during the Civil War. General P.G.T. Beauregard is said to have once stood on its balcony, surveying the harbor as the first shots of the conflict echoed through Charleston. It was a moment that would change the world, and some believe that the energy of that day never fully dissipated. Guests and staff of the house have reported strange phenomena that seem to tie directly to this history. Footsteps echo along the polished floors when no one is present, and shadowy figures dressed in Civil War uniforms have been glimpsed drifting through hallways and across rooms. These apparitions appear both solemn and restless, as though caught forever between duty and the horrors they witnessed. The presence of the past is not confined to visual sightings alone. Many who enter the house describe hearing phantom cannon fire over the water, the distant rumble of artillery echoing across the harbor even on the calmest of days. The sound is unnervingly real, carrying with it the weight of chaos and fear from a time long gone. Some visitors also report the acrid scent of smoke and gunpowder, filling rooms that have long been free of any source. The combination of auditory and olfactory phenomena makes the experience visceral, as if the walls themselves have absorbed the energy of battle and continue to release it for those sensitive enough to perceive it. Even mundane spaces in the house can feel charged with history. Walking through the parlor or up the grand staircase, guests have felt sudden chills or the sensation of being closely observed. Doors have been reported to open and close without cause, and objects sometimes shift inexplicably, as if guided by unseen hands. These occurrences are most often subtle, but they leave a lingering sense that the past is not idle, that the spirits of soldiers and civilians alike are still very much present, preserving memories that refuse to fade. Staff members working in the museum frequently recount stories that underscore the house's haunted reputation. A curator once reported hearing distant marching echo through the halls during closing hours, footsteps synchronized in a rhythm no human could produce alone. Another staffer described seeing a lone figure in uniform standing near a window overlooking the harbor, only for it to vanish when approached. Even those with little belief in the supernatural often feel an undeniable presence, a weight of history pressing gently yet insistently upon them. The house's connection to the harbor seems to amplify these experiences. Many apparitions are seen near windows or balconies, gazing out as though still monitoring the ships and tides below. The sound of water lapping against the docks sometimes carries hints of murmured orders, conversations, or commands from a time when the harbor was a strategic artery of war. Visitors have reported feeling the vibration of distant cannon fire, the air thick with tension, as if the battle continues unseen beyond the present moment. Paranormal investigators have occasionally explored the Edmonston-Alston house, drawn by its reputation and historical significance. EVP recordings have captured faint murmurs, footsteps, and even indistinct commands that resemble military orders. Cameras have occasionally caught fleeting shadows or vague figures dressed in period attire, often vanishing before clear identification is possible. Temperature drops, unexplained drafts, and sudden feelings of heaviness are common, reinforcing the belief that the house is more than a museum. It is a conduit through which history persists in a tangible form. For visitors, the experience is immersive and sometimes overwhelming. A quiet tour of the house can suddenly feel charged with the intensity of the past, with every creak of the floorboard, distant clap of thunder, or gust of wind seeming laden with meaning. Even those focused on architectural details or historical artifacts often find themselves aware of the unseen, sensing presences that defy explanation. It is this blend of beauty, history, and lingering energy that makes the Edmonston-Alston house both fascinating and unnerving. The spirits within the house are rarely described as malevolent. Instead, they carry a weight of remembrance, a persistent tether to moments of fear, courage, and tragedy. Soldiers, family members, and others connected to the house seem to exist in a state of quiet vigilance, bound to the place and to the pivotal events that unfolded there. Their presence transforms the house from a static historical site into a living testament to Charleston's past, reminding visitors that history is not confined to books and plaques. It is experienced, and sometimes it lingers. Today, the Edmonston-Alston house stands preserved for posterity, a museum showcasing the elegance of antebellum architecture and the stories of those who walked its halls. Yet alongside the tangible history, the intangible persists. The footsteps of soldiers, the echoes of cannon fire, the faint smell of smoke, and the watchful eyes of those who witness history in its most turbulent moments. For those willing to look and listen, the house offers more than a glimpse of the past. It offers a direct connection to the lives, struggles, and spirits that shaped it. The Allston House is a place where beauty and history intersect with the supernatural, where the events of a pivotal night in Charleston are preserved not only in archives but in lingering presence. Visitors leave with more than knowledge. They carry with them the sense that the past remains alive, visible, and audible, ready to remind the living of the night the world changed, and of those who stood vigil over it. Perched along Charleston's storied waterfront, 20 South Battery, formerly known as the Two-Meeting Street, irradiates charm, elegance, and a history that stretches back centuries. Its white-pillared facade, graceful balconies, and sprawling interior speak to Charleston's antebellum grandeur, drawing visitors eager to experience the city's architecture and hospitality. Yet behind the warm glow of its lamps and the inviting aroma of its common areas lies a quieter, more unsettling presence. Guests and staff alike report encounters that suggest the inn is more than a historical residence. It is a home to spirits whose lives and sorrows are etched into the very walls. One of the most commonly reported apparitions is that of a woman in Victorian attire. She is often seen drifting gracefully up the grand staircase, her presence marked by the faint rustle of fabric and the glimmer of candlelight that seems to follow her movements. Some describe her as sorrowful, her eyes distant, as though carrying the weight of tragedies long past. Others have glimpsed her standing silently in hallways, watching guests with a melancholy patience before vanishing when approached. Locals say she may be a member of a family that once lived in the house, her spirit bound by loss, grief, or perhaps unfulfilled love. Beyond visual sightings, visitors frequently report other signs of the supernatural. Doors have been known to open and close on their own, sometimes in a slow, deliberate fashion, as if inviting war, warning the unwary to enter. Lights flicker unexpectedly, casting shadows that stretch unnaturally across polished floors and ornate furniture. Even when electrical issues have been ruled out, these occurrences persist, leaving a lingering impression that the inn's history is actively asserting itself in the present. The atmosphere inside 20 South Battery is one of both elegance and quiet unease. The house's architecture, with its tall ceilings, narrow corridors, and hidden corners, seems to magnify the sense of presence. Footsteps echo unexpectedly, sometimes from rooms no one has entered. The faint scent of old perfume, floral and slightly sweet, has been reported in hallways where no one is standing. Guests often feel as though they are being observed, a subtle awareness that someone or something follows their movements. Yet the sensation is not overtly threatening. It is as if the spirits are watching over the house, quietly ensuring that the stories of its past are neither forgotten nor ignored. Staff members who work in the inn have their own accounts of ghostly activity. One housekeeper described hearing soft humming emanating from the parlor late at night, a melody without a source, lingering in the still air before fading. Another reported chairs shifting slightly when no one was near, as though someone had briefly occupied them. Occasionally, staff have glimpsed shadowy forms at the end of hallways or in reflective surfaces. Fleeting shapes that vanish before a closer inspection is possible. While these experiences can be unnerving, many report that the spirits seem more inclined toward presence than malevolent silent observers of the living world that continues to play out around them. The inn's history itself adds context to these hauntings. 20 South Battery has been witness to generations of Charleston life, including moments of joy, loss, and heartbreak. Some of its spirits are thought to be tied to these emotional imprints, lingering in the hope or the habit of observing the living world they once participated in. Tales passed down over the years speak of love lost too soon, of family members separated by tragedy, and of moments that left an enduring mark on the house. These imprints, it is said, resonate in the walls and floors, manifesting as glimpses of figures, strange sounds, or fleeting touches. Visitors to the inn often recount a combination of experiences. A glimpse of a Victorian lady on the staircase, a sudden draft in a closed room, a door moving without explanation, or the faint flicker of candlelight that seems to appear and disappear on its own. These moments are rarely predictable. adding to the sense that the house exists partly in its own timeline, independent of the ordinary world. Even those unfamiliar with ghost lore find themselves pausing, sensing that 20 South Battery has stories to tell, stories that are sometimes seen, sometimes heard, and sometimes only felt. Paranormal investigators drawn to the site have documented the unusual activity with careful attention. Audio recordings have captured unexplained creaks, faint voices, and whispers that cannot be attributed to human sources. Cameras sometimes record fleeting shadows or subtle movements, often occurring in corners, staircases, or hallways. Investigators frequently remark on the strong emotional energy present, noting that the inn feels alive with the echoes of lives once fully lived and now lingering in spectral form. Despite its reputation for hauntings, 20 South Battery remains a beloved destination for travelers. Its history, architecture, and location on Charleston's scenic waterfront continue to attract visitors eager to experience both its beauty and its mysteries. For those who stay overnight, the experience is immersive. The elegance of the inn is intertwined with a palpable sense of the past, a subtle awareness that some guests are not among the living. It is this interplay between charm and unease that defines the house, creating a uniquely haunting yet captivating atmosphere. The spirit of 20 South Battery is not one of menace, but of memory, a lingering presence that ensures the stories, sorrows, and joys of its past residents are never entirely forgotten. Whether it is a figure in Victorian attire on the staircase, the unexplained flicker of lights, or the soft hum of a melody in the night, the house reminds visitors that the past is always near. It is a place where history is alive, where grief, love, and memory have left lasting impressions, and where those willing to look closely may witness the lives that still linger in quiet observation. At 20 South Battery, the living and the departed coexist in a delicate balance. Guests may come seeking comfort and history, but they leave with more a sense that the inn's walls hold secrets, emotions, and presences that have persisted for centuries. The house offers warmth, hospitality, and beauty, yet it does so alongside the subtle but undeniable reality that some of its residents are no longer of this world, forever bound to the home they once knew. Chalmers Street in Charleston is a picturesque and historic lane, known for its charming cobblestones, colonial-era architecture, and narrow sidewalks that invite visitors to step back into the city's storied past. By day, it is a photographer's dream, lined with wrought iron balconies, ivy-covered walls, and glimpses of gas lamps that recall a gentler era. Yet beneath this beauty lies a history fraught with sorrow, suffering, and tragedies of the enslaved men, women, and children who once passed through this area under the shadow of commerce and cruelty. For those who tread Chalmers Street after dark, the past seems to reassert itself in ways both subtle and unsettling. Local lore tells of the cries of enslaved people, once brought to nearby markets to be sold or auctioned. Though these marketplaces have long since vanished, the suffering endured there seems to linger, saturating the street with an emotional residue that can be felt by those sensitive to its energy. Visitors report sudden feelings of oppression or melancholy, as if the air itself carries the weight of centuries of anguish. Even those with no prior knowledge of Chalmers Street's darker history often describe an inexplicable heaviness in the chest, a tightening in the throat, or the sudden urge to move quickly past certain intersections. Witnesses frequently describe shadowy figures darting across the cobblestones. These silhouettes are rarely detailed, often fleeting glimpses that vanish when directly observed, yet their presence is unmistakable. Some appear to drag invisible chains, their slow, deliberate movements suggesting burden and despair. Others seem to be caught hovering in the street before fading into the darkness. Many accounts describe multiple figures appearing simultaneously, moving as though performing tasks long since abandoned, their faces obscured but their suffering palpable. Auditory phenomena are just as chilling. Footsteps echo unevenly along the cobblestones, sometimes coming from behind a visitor, then abruptly ceasing when attention is turned. Cries, whispers, and even sobs have been reported drifting through the night air. indistinct yet unmistakably human. Some describe hearing the sharp clink of chains being dragged across stone, the metallic sound resonating off nearby buildings and amplifying the sense of historical trauma. The combination of sound and shadow creates a visceral atmosphere, reminding anyone who walks Chalmers Street that the city's beauty is inseparable from its past. The street's layout and architecture contribute to its haunted ambience. Narrow alleys and closely spaced buildings create pockets of shadow where light barely reaches, amplifying the effects of a passing figure or flickering lamp. Stone walls and brick facades can carry sound in unexpected ways, making whispers and footsteps appear closer or more distant than they truly are. Many who walk Chalmers Street alone at night report feeling as if they are being followed, though no one is in sight. The sensation is often accompanied by sudden chills or the faint impression of brush against the legs or shoulders, as though unseen hands are reminding the living that the past is ever present. Historical accounts corroborate some of these experiences. Chalmers Street was once adjacent to sites where enslaved people were bought, sold, and traded, and the street itself functioned as a thoroughfare, connecting the markets to other parts of the city. It witnessed countless acts of suffering and desperation, moments that left invisible scars etched into the very fabric of the lane. Those who understand its history often report a heightened sensitivity to its energy, feeling the cumulative grief of lives disrupted and lost. Paranormal investigators, drawn to Chalmers Street, describe phenomena consistent with emotional imprint, haunting. Equipment often picks up inexplicable sounds, low moans, whispered conversations, or metallic clinks with no visible source. Some have captured thermal anomalies or brief flickers of shadow on video, fleeting and impossible to identify, but compelling nonetheless. Investigators often describe a sense of oppressive presence, an energy that is not aggressive but heavy, filled with sadness, and resistant to interference or distraction. For those who are particularly sensitive, walking the street can be emotionally overwhelming, as though the weight of history is pressing down in real time. Despite or perhaps because of its haunted reputation, Chalmers Street remains a popular destination. Visitors come to admire its architectural charm, to capture photographs, or to explore the hidden history of Charleston. Yet even those who arrive with purely aesthetic intentions frequently report encounters that challenge their understanding of the city. The contrast between the street's visual beauty and its spiritual darkness is stark, leaving a lasting impression that blends history, architecture, and human memory into a haunting experience. The spirits associated with Chalmers Street are often described as non-malevolent, though they are undeniably tragic. They do not appear to seek harm, but their presence is a constant reminder of injustice, suffering, and resilience. Observing them more, merely sensing them elicits empathy, reflection, and a profound awareness that history is not confined to textbooks. For some, walking the street becomes a silent act of witnessing, a way of acknowledging lives once lived and hardships endured. The enduring energy of Chalmers Street is a testament to the city's complex past. It demonstrates that the elegance of Charleston cannot erase the pain embedded in its foundations. The cobblestones may gleam in sunlight, balconies may glint with the reflection of gas lamps, and the air may smell of salt and sea breeze. But the cries, shadows, and chains remain. Those who walk Chalmers Street after dark step into a liminal space where the living and the dead coexist, a place where beauty and sorrow intertwine, and where history is not only remembered, it is experienced. Chalmers Street serves as both a reminder and a witness. It reminds visitors of the cost of the city's prosperity, of the lives bound by injustice, and of the enduring presence of memory. It bears witness to every visitor, every shadow, and every whisper, ensuring that the past continues to speak. To walk this historic lane is to encounter Charleston in its fullest, most haunting form, where the echoes of grief linger just beneath the surface of its cobblestones. Rising from the waters of Charleston Harbor, Fort Sumter stands as a stoic sentinel, a symbol of the city's pivotal role in American history. Its brick walls, scarred by cannon fire and weathered by centuries of wind and salt, are a visible testament to the battles that shaped a nation. Built to guard the entrance to the harbor, the fort is best known as the site where the first shots of the Civil War were fired in April 1861. Yet, beyond its historical significance, Fort Sumter carries a reputation for the paranormal stories of restless soldiers, phantom gunfire, and cries that echo across the water have persisted for generations. To step onto its grounds is to enter a place where history lingers, where the echoes of war refuse to be silenced. Visitors to Fort Sumter often describe an immediate sense of solemnity, intensified by the fort's isolated location. Surrounded by the harbor on all sides, the island feels cut off from the modern world, the only sounds being the lapping of waves, the cries of gulls, and the occasional distant hum of boats. In this quiet, many report noticing things that cannot be explained. Uniformed figures, sometimes visible only in the corner of one's eye, are said to pace the battlements, their movements deliberate and purposeful. They appear in full 19th century military attire, rifles slung over their shoulders or carried at the ready, as though still guarding the harbor against an unseen enemy. When looked at directly, they often vanish, leaving only the sense of their presence behind. Auditory phenomena are among the most commonly reported experiences on the island. The crack of phantom musket fire, the echo of cannons across the water, and the distant thud of artillery are described by visitors as startlingly real. These sounds are often accompanied by the scent of gunpowder carried on the breeze, a faint, acrid temp that seems impossible to attribute to the surrounding environment. Some witnesses report hearing desperate cries or shouts, the anguish of soldiers trapped in a moment of battle that replay endlessly. The combination of sound, scent, and visual apparitions creates a multi-sensory experience that transports those present back to the violent, chaotic days of April 1861. Many ghostly encounters are reported near the areas of the fort most historically significant, the parapets, the barracks, and the ruins where artillery once stood. Shadows are seen moving among the walls, sometimes fleeting, sometimes lingering, as if observing the living intruders. Visitors have felt sudden chills, as if the cold touch of history has reached through time. The energy of the fort seems concentrated, pressing against the senses in a way that is simultaneously awe-inspiring and unsettling. Even those who arrive with purely historical or touristic intentions often leave with the feeling that something unseen is walking alongside them, following the patterns of soldiers long gone. Fort Sumter's paranormal reputation is bolstered by its violent history. The fort endured repeated bombardments during the Civil War, and though few lives were lost during the first attack, subsequent engagements, including Union bombardments in 1863, resulted in casualties and destruction. The intensity of human suffering, fear, and resolve concentrated in such a small area is said to have left an imprint, an echo of lives and memories that refuses to fade. Many paranormal investigators who visit the site note a strong residual energy, often detected as temperature fluctuations, unexplained sounds, or fleeting shadows. EVP recordings sometimes capture muted shouts or indistinct commands that seem to mimic the rhythm of battlefield orders. Some visitors also report a sense of timelessness on the fort, a feeling that the present moment has collapsed into the past. Standing on the battlements, gazing across the harbor, they describe glimpsing small details out of place. A soldier adjusting a cannon, the glint of a bayonet in the sun, or the hurried movements of men carrying supplies. These sightings are never sustained, but their fleeting presence is enough to convince many that Fort Sumter exists partially out of time, a frozen battlefield where the living and dead briefly intersect. Despite its haunted reputation, Fort Sumter remains a revered historical site. Tourists arrive to learn about the Civil War, to witness the fort's architecture and views of Charleston Harbor, and to contemplate the sacrifices of those who defended it. Yet for those attuned to the paranormal, the experience is deeper, more layered. They sense the fort as a place of memory, of ongoing duty, and of soldiers whose service extends beyond the mortal world. The spirits are not necessarily malevolent. They are vigilant, replaying the moments that defined them, ensuring that the living remember what occurred here. The isolation of the island seems to intensify these phenomena. Cut off from the hum of modern life, the fort becomes a stage where history can play itself out without interference. The wind carries whispers across the water, the echoes of musket fire roll over the waves, and the faint impressions of soldiers' footsteps can be felt in the dust and rubble. For many visitors, the effect is haunting yet deeply moving, a reminder that history is never entirely gone, that the sacrifices and struggles of those who came before continue to shape the present. Fort Sumter is more than a monument. It is a battlefield frozen in time. Its bricks, battlements, and ruins are infused with the presence of soldiers still fighting battles long ended. Their vigilance extending beyond the grave. Visitors report seeing them, hearing them, and sometimes even feeling them, a connection that blurs the line between past and present. The fort stands as a testament not only to history, but to the enduring echoes of human courage, fear, and loss. For those who step onto the island, the experience is unforgettable. Fort Sumter offers a tangible connection to the Civil War, a chance to walk where history unfolded, and perhaps to glimpse the soldiers who never truly left. Their phantom gunfire, cries, and marching footsteps remind us that the past is alive, vigilant, and forever present in the stones and sands of Charleston Harbor. Founded in 1770, the College of Charleston is not only one of the oldest institutions of higher learning in the United States, but also one of its most haunted. Nestled in the heart of Charleston, the campus blends academic prestige with centuries of history. Its cobblestone walkways, stately buildings, and lush gardens exuding an old-world charm. Yet beneath the scholarly pursuits and collegiate bustle, the college harbors a quieter, darker presence. Students, faculty, and visitors alike have reported encounters that suggest the campus is a place where the living and the dead coexist, where knowledge is pursued not only by the mind but also by lingering spirits who refuse to move on. Among the campus buildings, Randolph Hall stands as the most notable for paranormal activity. Its neoclassical facade, tall windows, and sweeping interior corridors make it the centerpiece of the college, both architecturally and historically. Students often report seeing shadowy figures drifting past its windows late at night. Figures whose movements are deliberate yet fleeting, disappearing the moment anyone attempts a closer look. Some describe these apparitions as former professors or students, caught in routines from centuries past, wandering halls that once echoed with the footsteps of academic pursuit. Others have claimed to see figures seated in empty classrooms, poring over books, or tapping away on typewriters long retired from use. Doors slamming without cause is one of the most common phenomena reported across the campus. Students rushing between classes or studying late at night have heard sudden crashes of wood against frame. Doors swinging open or shut despite being secured. In some instances, multiple doors seem to operate simultaneously, creating a sense that the building itself is alive, responding to unseen forces moving through its interior. These occurrences are most often reported during the evening hours, when the corridors are empty and the quiet amplifies each sound, turning a mundane hallway into a stage for unseen activity. Temperature fluctuations are another hallmark of the College of Charleston's haunted reputation. Students studying late at night frequently report sudden drops in temperature, sometimes concentrated in particular corners of a room or along hallways. These cold spots are often accompanied by a sensation of being watched or the faint brush of something passing nearby, triggering an instinctive chill even in well-heated spaces. Some believe these sensations are linked to the residual energy of the campus's earliest inhabitants, students and faculty who lived, studied, and sometimes died within its walls, leaving imprints of their presence behind. Auditory phenomena add a chilling layer to the college's spectral activity. In Randolph Hall, faint voices sometimes echo across empty classrooms, indistinct murmurs that seem to mimic discussions, lectures, or the rustling of papers. Some students report hearing the rhythmic tapping of typewriter keys, even though no machines are operating. Others describe whispers in corridors, footsteps pacing above or below, or the sound of hurried scurrying along the floors. all occurring without a visible source. These sounds are often subtle at first, drawing attention gradually, until their repeated occurrence leaves an undeniable impression that the building is alive with memory. Certain areas of the campus appear to concentrate these paranormal events. Dormitories, particularly the older ones, are frequent sites of unexplained activity. Students have reported seeing fleeting shadows at the edge of their vision, sensing invisible presences while studying late into the night, or hearing their names whispered when no one is nearby. Some dormitories have long histories, housing generations of students over the centuries, and it seems that the energy of those who once lived there has accumulated, leaving an invisible footprint on the walls and hallways. Even those skeptical of ghosts often find themselves affected by the College of Charleston's atmosphere. Longtime faculty members occasionally describe moments of unease when walking through empty corridors, a sudden impression that someone is following, or the inexplicable movement of objects on a desk or shelf. Visitors too often feel the weight of history pressing down upon them, a sense that the college is more than a collection of buildings, and students that it is a repository of countless lives, ambitions, and memories, both living and departed. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to the college for decades, documenting unusual occurrences with audio and visual equipment. EVP recordings sometimes capture faint conversations, shuffling papers, or the clicks of old machinery. Cameras occasionally record shadows flitting along hallways or figures seated where no one is present. Temperature sensors register sudden drops, and unexplained breezes sweep through rooms with sealed windows. Investigators often note a sense of emotional resonance, a feeling that the spirits present are not malevolent but attentive, observing the campus's activities with quiet persistence. Despite the ghostly presence, the College of Charleston continues to thrive as an institution of learning. Students pursue degrees, attend lectures, and engage in campus life, often unaware or only mildly aware of the spectral company surrounding them. Yet for those who have experienced it firsthand, the campus offers more than history and education. It offers a glimpse into the past, a living connection to generations of students, professors, and residents who have left their mark. The ghosts of the College of Charleston are not malevolent. They are guardians of memory, preserving the stories of ambition, struggle, and everyday life from centuries past. Walking through the campus at night is a unique experience. The quiet rustle of leaves, the soft glow of lamps on cobblestone walkways, and the occasional creak of an old building combine with a palpable sense of presence, creating an atmosphere where the living and the dead coexist. Shadowy figures, ghostly whispers, and sudden chills serve as reminders that time at the College of Charleston is layered. The College of Charleston is a place where education and the supernatural intersect. It nurtures the minds of the living while sheltering the spirits of the past, creating a unique environment in which history is both tangible and spectral. Students, faculty, and visitors alike are left with the impression that while they walk the campus, they are not alone, that the ambitions, regrets, and lives of those who came before remain present, quietly observing, and eternally a part of the college's enduring story. And so, our lanterns dim as we leave the streets of Charleston behind, a city draped in beauty, history, and southern charm, but also in shadows. From pirate executions to tragic lovers, from restless soldiers to grieving mothers, Charleston holds its ghosts close, refusing to let them fade. Perhaps that is why the city feels so alive, because it is never truly alone. Every creaking step on its cobblestones, every whisper of wind through the graveyards, every flicker of light in an empty room may be more than just imagination. If you ever find yourself in Charleston, remember this: the city is watching, and the past walks beside you. When the night grows quiet and the air grows cold, don't be surprised if you feel a presence at your side. After all, Charleston is not just a city of the living yet, it's a city of spirits. Thank you for walking with me through the 25 most haunted places in Charleston, South Carolina. Until next time, keep your light close and your courage closer.